When love costs everything. She signed the contract with shaking hands, 1 year of her life for $300,000. Enough to save her dying brother. Enough to sell her soul to a man who looked at her like she was just another asset to acquire. Adrian Voss didn't do love. He did transactions, and Alara Quinn had just become his most expensive one. But in a penthouse made of glass and secrets, some deals have a way of rewriting themselves. Some cages have doors that lock from the inside. Stay until the end to see how far desperation can push two broken people. Drop a like and comment your city so I can see how far this story travels. The fluorescent lights in County General's ICU hummed like dying insects. Alara Quinn had been staring at them for so long that when she closed her eyes, she could still see the skeletal grid burned into her retinas. 48 hours without real sleep did that to a person. So did watching your 13-year-old brother die by increments. Liam looked small in the hospital bed. Too small. The kind of small that made Alara's chest feel like someone had reached in and twisted her lungs into knots. His skin had that translucent quality she'd only seen in old photographs, the kind where you could trace the blue rivers of veins beneath the surface. The machines surrounding him beeped in a rhythm she'd memorized. Sometimes, late at night, she'd catch herself counting the beeps like rosary beads, bargaining with a universe that had stopped listening months ago. "Miss Quinn?" The doctor's voice cut through the monotonous symphony of medical equipment. Dr. Reeves was young, maybe 30, with the kind of premature gray that came from delivering bad news for a living. He stood in the doorway, tablet clutched against his chest like a shield. "We need to talk about the transplant list." Alara didn't move from her plastic chair. It had molded to her body over the past weeks, leaving permanent grooves in her spine. "He's still on it, right?" Dr. Reeves stepped into the room, and she saw it in his face before he opened his mouth. That particular arrangement of muscle and nerve that doctors learned in medical school, the one that said, "I'm sorry," without committing to actual words. The board reviewed his case again. He paused, and in that pause, Alara felt the floor dissolve beneath her feet. Without the upfront payment for post-transplant care, they can't prioritize him. The waiting list is, there are patients who can afford... How much? I'm sorry? Alara's voice came out flat, dead. How much to keep him on the priority list? Dr. Reeves glanced at his tablet, though they both knew he didn't need to. These numbers were branded into his memory the same way the fluorescent lights were branded into hers. 300,000. That would cover the transplant, the first year of anti-rejection medications, monitoring potential complications. $300,000. She said it slowly, tasting each syllable. It might as well have been 300 million. 300 billion. Numbers that big stopped meaning anything when your bank account had $57 in it and your credit cards were maxed out from previous hospital bills. There are programs, Dr. Reeves offered weakly. Payment plans, fundraising platforms. We tried GoFundMe. Alara's laugh came out sharp enough to cut. Raised $4,000. My boss at the diner donated $100. Real generous of him, considering he cut my hours because I kept missing shifts to be here. Dr. Reeves shifted his weight. The tile floor squeaked under his shoes, a small sound that seemed obscenely loud in the heavy silence. I wish I had better options to give you. How long does he have without the transplant? Alara, psh. How long? The doctor's throat worked. 6 weeks. Maybe 8 if we're lucky. Lucky. The word hung in the air like a sick joke. Alara looked at her brother, at the gentle rise and fall of his chest, at the purple shadows beneath his eyes, at the Batman comic book someone had left on his bedside table that he was too weak to read. 13 years old. He should be worried about algebra tests and whether Sarah Mitchell liked him back. Instead, he was drowning from the inside, his kidneys failing cell by cell, and she couldn't do a goddamn thing about it. Thank you, Dr. Reeves. Her voice came from somewhere far away, like she was hearing herself through water. For being honest. He lingered in the doorway for another moment, probably searching for something comforting to say. Then he left, his footsteps fading down the corridor, and Alara was alone again with the humming lights and the beeping machines and the impossible weight of $300,000. She stayed until visiting hours ended. A nurse, the kind one with the nose ring whose name Alara could never remember, gently touched her shoulder and reminded her that she needed to go home, get some rest, take care of herself. as if rest was something that existed anymore, as if she had a self left to take care of. The parking lot was mostly empty. Alara's car, a 2003 Honda Civic with a cracked windshield and an engine that sounded like it was coughing up a lung, sat under a flickering streetlight. She'd bought it for $800 3 years ago. It had seemed like a fortune then. She sat in the driver's seat but didn't start the engine. Couldn't, because starting the engine meant driving home to the apartment she shared with 2 other waitresses, meant lying in bed staring at the ceiling, meant facing another morning where she'd wake up and remember all over again that her brother was dying and she was powerless to stop it. Her phone buzzed. A text from her roommate, Jessica. Bill collectors called again, told them you died. Hope that's cool? Alara almost smiled. Almost. She opened her banking app instead, even though she knew what she'd find. $57.32. Her credit score was somewhere in the basement, possibly digging deeper. She'd sold everything worth selling, her mother's jewelry, her laptop, even her good winter coat. There was nothing left except the clothes on her back and a car that might not survive another winter. $300,000. The number pulsed behind her eyes like a migraine. She was still sitting there, phone clutched in her hand, when it rang. Unknown number. Normally she'd ignore it, probably another debt collector, another person calling to remind her of all the ways she was failing, but tonight, with desperation clawing at her throat, she answered. Alara Quinn? The voice was male, crisp, professional. The kind of voice that had never known what it felt like to count pennies for gas money. Who's asking? My name is Marcus Webb. I'm calling on behalf of Adrian Voss. The name meant nothing to her. I think you have the wrong number. You work at Shirley's Diner on 5th Street, correct? You have a brother currently in County General's ICU. Liam, 13 years old, end-stage renal failure. Alara's blood turned to ice. Who the hell are you? As I said, I represent Mr. Voss. He'd like to meet with you to discuss a potential arrangement. Tonight, if possible. I'm not interested in whatever you're selling. Mr. Voss doesn't sell, Miss Quinn. He invests, and right now he believes you might be a worthwhile investment. That's... What kind of sick? Your brother has 6 weeks to live. Mr. Voss can extend that timeline indefinitely. A pause, perfectly timed. Are you willing to hear him out? Alara's hand tightened on the phone. Every instinct screamed that this was wrong, dangerous, the kind of thing you saw in movies before everything went to hell. But every instinct also knew that Liam had 6 weeks and she had $57.32. Where? The word tasted like ashes. Marcus Webb gave her an address. Downtown. The kind of address that came with doormen and marble lobbies and monthly rents higher than she made in a year. Mr. Voss will see you at 10 o'clock. Don't be late. The line went dead. Alara sat in her dying car under the flickering streetlight and wondered what kind of devil wore a suit and had people make his phone calls for him. Then she checked the time, 9:15, started the engine, and drove toward whatever fresh hell was waiting. Amati. The building was exactly what she'd imagined, glass and steel rising into the night sky like a monument to excess. The lobby was all white marble and modern art that probably cost more than her brother's medical bills. The doorman looked at her thrift store jeans and her coat with the broken zipper, with the kind of polite contempt rich people paid good money to cultivate in their staff. Alara Quinn, she said, hating how small her voice sounded against all that marble. I have an appointment. He checked his tablet without bothering to hide his skepticism. Something changed in his face, surprise maybe, or alarm. Penthouse level? Elevator on the right. The elevator was mirrored on all sides. Alara watched herself multiply into infinity as she rose. A tired woman with dark circles under her eyes and hair she hadn't washed in 3 days, surrounded by endless reflections of her own desperation. The numbers climbed, 15, 20, 30. The city fell away beneath her feet until she was floating in a column of light, and her ears popped from the pressure. The doors opened directly into an apartment. Not a hallway, not a landing, just straight into someone's home, which felt like a violation of physics and common decency. Miss Quinn. Marcus Webb materialized from somewhere to her left. He was exactly what his voice had promised. Late 40s, expensive suit, the kind of face that had been professionally trained never to reveal actual emotion. Right on time. Mr. Voss appreciates punctuality. The penthouse was vast. Floor-to-ceiling windows showed the city sprawled out like scattered jewelry. The furniture looked like it belonged in a museum, all clean lines and uncomfortable angles. Everything was white or gray or black. No color, no warmth, like someone had built a display case for human beings and forgotten to add the human part. "He'll be with you shortly," Marcus said, gesturing to a chair that probably cost more than her car. "Can I get you anything? Water, coffee?" "Answers would be good." Marcus's mouth twitched, not quite a smile. "I imagine you'll get those soon enough." He disappeared through a doorway, leaving Alara alone in the sterile expanse. She didn't sit, couldn't. The nervous energy coursing through her veins wouldn't allow it. Instead, she drifted toward the windows, drawn by the impossible view. From up here, the city looked clean, manageable, all the dirt and desperation hidden by distance and darkness. "Beautiful, isn't it?" The voice came from behind her, low, controlled, with an edge that suggested its owner didn't waste words. Alara turned. Adrian Voss stood in the doorway Marcus had vanished through. He was tall, probably 6'2", with the kind of build that came from expensive gyms and personal trainers. His suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, probably worth more than she'd made in the last year. Dark hair, cut with military precision. Strong jaw. The kind of face that fashion magazines would call striking because handsome was too common a word. But it was his eyes that stopped her. Gray. Cold. The color of winter steel. Eyes that looked at her and saw exactly what she was worth, calculated to the decimal point. "Mr. Voss?" She forced the words out steady. "Your assistant said you wanted to meet." "I did." He moved into the room with the fluid confidence of someone who'd never questioned his right to occupy space. "Sit." It wasn't a request. Alara sat. Adrian took the chair across from her, maintaining exactly the right distance. Close enough for conversation, far enough to avoid intimacy. He didn't sprawl or relax. He arranged himself with the precision of someone who'd weaponized body language. "You're wondering why you're here," he said. "Among other things, I need a wife." Alara blinked. Of all the things she'd expected him to say, that hadn't made the list. "Congratulations. I'm sure you'll be very happy together." "Not a real wife." His expression didn't change. "A contractual one. 1 year. Public appearances, social functions, maintaining the appearance of a stable marriage. In exchange, I'll pay for your brother's transplant, all medical expenses, full recovery." The words hit her like a physical blow. She actually felt her body rock backward in the chair. "You're joking." "I don't joke about business, Miss Quinn, and this is business." "You want to buy a wife. I want to hire one." "There's a difference." He leaned forward slightly. "My father is threatening to remove me from my position as CEO of Voss Industries unless I demonstrate personal stability. Apparently, my lack of a wife suggests a lack of commitment, a character flaw he finds unacceptable in someone running his company. So get married. To someone who actually wants to marry you. That would require emotional investment, time, vulnerability, none of which I'm interested in providing." His eyes held hers, unblinking. "This is cleaner. A transaction. You need money I have. I need a wife you can provide the appearance of. 1 year, and we both get what we want." Alara's mind spun. This was insane. Illegal, probably. Definitely immoral. This is human trafficking. It's a contract. You'd be free to leave at any time, though you'd forfeit payment. All terms negotiable. Full legal protections. He pulled a folder from somewhere beside his chair, set it on the table between them. "My lawyers have drafted the initial agreement. You're welcome to have your own legal representation review it. With what money? I'll provide you with an attorney. Independent. No conflict of interest." He sat back. "I'm not trying to trap you, Miss Quinn. I'm offering you a solution to an impossible problem." She stared at the folder, thick, professional. The weight of it seemed to warp gravity, pulling everything toward its center. "Why me?" "Practicality. You need money urgently. You have no family except your brother. No romantic entanglements. No social media presence to complicate the narrative. You're—" He paused, choosing his words with surgical precision. "Unremarkable enough to be believable. My father would never accept someone who appeared to be a gold digger. You look like someone I might actually marry for normal reasons. Gee, thanks. I'm not trying to flatter you. I'm explaining my reasoning. Elara wanted to throw the folder at his face, wanted to tell him to take his money and his cold eyes and his sterile apartment and shove them all somewhere anatomically creative. But Liam's face floated in her mind, pale, fragile, fading, and the words died in her throat. What would it involve? Her voice came out barely above a whisper. Living here. Attending events as my wife, presenting a united front in public. In private, we'd maintain separate lives, separate rooms, no intimacy, no expectations beyond the contract. For a year. 12 months from the date of signing, after which you'd receive a lump sum payment of $100,000, in addition to your brother's medical expenses. Enough to start over, go to college, whatever you want. And if I say no? Adrian's expression didn't change, but something flickered in those winter steel eyes. Then you say no. I'll find someone else, and your brother. He let the sentence hang unfinished. The cruelty of it was breathtaking, not in his words, but in the simple truth they contained. He wasn't threatening her. He was just stating facts. She needed help he could provide. Without that help, Liam would die. Those were the variables. The rest was just math. I need time to think. You have 6 weeks, maybe 8 if you're lucky. He stood, smooth and controlled. Take the contract, read it, have it reviewed, but understand that every day you wait is a day your brother doesn't have. Elara stood too, on shaking legs. She picked up the folder. It was heavy, real, the kind of weight that could anchor a person or drown them. This is insane. This is business, Miss Quinn. Sometimes they're the same thing. He walked toward the elevator, pressed the call button. Marcus will arrange a meeting with the attorney tomorrow morning, if you're available. The elevator doors opened. Elara stepped inside, still clutching the folder. As the doors began to close, Adrian spoke again. For what it's worth, I am sorry about your brother. It's an impossible situation, but I'm offering you a way out. He paused. The only way out you're likely to get. The doors closed. The elevator descended. Alara's reflection surrounded her again, multiplied, fragmented, holding a folder full of promises that felt more like threats. Somewhere around the 20th floor, her hands started shaking. By the 10th, she was crying. By the lobby, she'd stopped, wiped her face, and walked out into the night with her spine straight and her jaw set. The Honda started on the 3rd try. She drove back to the apartment in a daze, the folder sitting on the passenger seat like a living thing. Jessica was already asleep when she got home. Elara went to her room, barely bigger than a closet, just enough space for a twin bed and a dresser, and opened the contract. 27 pages, single-spaced, legal language that might as well have been ancient Greek. But certain phrases jumped out at her, illuminated by the cheap lamp on her nightstand. Party A, Adrian Voss, agrees to provide full financial support for all medical expenses related to Liam Quinn's kidney transplant and subsequent care. Party B, Elara Quinn, agrees to reside in Party A's primary residence for the duration of the contract. Both parties agree to maintain the public appearance of a legitimate marriage, including but not limited to social events, media appearances, and family functions. Physical intimacy is not required and will only occur with explicit mutual consent. Either party may terminate this agreement with 30 days' notice, though early termination by Party B will result in forfeiture of all compensation except medical expenses already incurred. Elara read it twice, 3 times. The words started to blur together, becoming abstract symbols that represented something too large for her exhausted mind to process. She fell asleep with the contract spread across her chest, streetlight filtering through her curtained window, and dreamed of fluorescent lights and winter steel eyes. The attorney Adrian provided was a woman named Diane Foster, sharp-eyed, late 50s, with the kind of expression that suggested she'd seen every con and scheme the world had to offer. They met in a coffee shop in neutral territory, far from the marble lobbies and glass towers. "This is unusual," Diane said, scanning the contract with practiced efficiency. "But it's airtight. Voss's lawyers are good. Very good." "So it's legal? Marriage contracts?" "Technically, you can't contract for marriage itself. That's against public policy. But this is structured as a personal services agreement with marriage as a component. Gray area, but defensible. She looked up. The real question is whether you understand what you're signing. I need the money. He needs a wife. It's simple. Nothing about this is simple. Diane set the contract down, folded her hands. You'll be giving up a year of your life, your freedom, your privacy, living with a man you don't know, pretending to love him in public while maintaining emotional distance in private. That kind of cognitive dissonance does things to people. My brother is dying. I know. Her voice softened. And I understand why you're considering this, but I need you to understand the psychological cost. This isn't just about money and medical bills. It's about who you'll be when this year is over. Alara thought about the fluorescent lights, the beeping machines, Liam's translucent skin. I'll be someone whose brother is alive. Diane studied her for a long moment. Then she pulled out a pen. There are a few clauses I'd like to add. Protection against emotional manipulation, clear boundaries on what constitutes a breach of contract, an escape clause if things become abusive. He doesn't seem like the type. They never do. Until they are. Diane's expression hardened. I'm adding the clauses. Non-negotiable. If Voss balks, he can find another lawyer and another bride. They spent 2 hours going through the contract line by line. Diane added her amendments in red ink, each one a small shield against potential disaster. By the end, the document looked like it had bled out onto itself. I'll send this to Voss's attorneys, Diane said. Give them 48 hours to respond. In the meantime, think about this. Really think about it. Because once you sign, everything changes. Alara nodded. She'd already thought about it. Thought about nothing else. The math was simple. 1 year of her life versus the rest of Liam's. There was no universe in which that calculation came out any other way. She visited her brother that afternoon. He was awake, sort of, the groggy, half-conscious state that the medications induced. His eyes tracked her as she entered, managed a weak smile. Hey, troublemaker, she said, settling into the molded plastic chair that had become her second home. Hey. His voice was thread-thin. You look tired. Pot, kettle. She picked up the Batman comic, started reading where they'd left off 3 days ago. It was easier than talking, easier than explaining that she was about to sell herself to a stranger to keep him breathing. Halfway through the second page, Liam's hand found hers. His fingers were cold. Too cold. I heard the doctors talking. About the transplant list. Alara's throat closed. It's okay, he said quietly. I know we can't afford it. I know. Don't. The word came out sharp. Don't you dare give up on me. I'm working on it. I'm going to fix this. How? She couldn't tell him. Couldn't explain that she was about to sign her life away to a man with eyes like winter. So she squeezed his hand and lied. I got a new job. Better pay. Benefits. We're going to be fine. Liam looked at her with those 2 old eyes, and she knew he didn't believe her. But he was 13 and dying and desperate for hope. So he nodded and squeezed back, and they finished reading the comic in silence. Diane called 2 days later. They accepted all the amendments. You're clear to sign whenever you're ready. When does he want to do this? Soon as possible. His father is applying pressure. There's a board meeting next month where his position will be reviewed. He wants to present you as his wife by then. A month. 4 weeks to become someone else. To step into a glass cage and lock the door behind her. Set it up, Alara said. The signing took place in Adrian's attorney's office. Mahogany desk, leather chairs, diplomas on the wall that probably cost more than medical school. Adrian was already there when she arrived, looking exactly as he had before. Controlled, expensive, inhuman. His attorney, a silver-haired man named Richard something, walked them through the final version. Any questions before we proceed? Richard asked. Alara had 1,000. What happens when I can't stand the sight of you? What if I fall apart? What if this breaks me in ways I can't fix? But she just shook her head. Adrian signed first. His signature was a slash of black ink, violent and precise. Then he slid the contract across the table. Alara's hand shook as she picked up the pen. This was it. The moment where everything changed, where she stopped being Alara Quinn, struggling waitress with a dying brother, and became Alara Voss, purchased wife of a corporate titan. The pen touched paper. Her signature emerged, smaller than his, messier, but no less binding. Congratulations, Richard said, like they'd just bought a house instead of selling a year of someone's life. You're legally contracted. Adrian stood, extended his hand. Business formal. Welcome to the arrangement, Miss Quinn. She took his hand. His grip was firm, cool, exactly as impersonal as everything else about him. It's Mrs. Voss now, isn't it? Something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe, or recognition that she had more spine than her desperation suggested. I suppose it is. They signed the marriage license that afternoon at City Hall. A board clerk processed their paperwork with the enthusiasm of someone filing tax returns. 2 witnesses, Marcus Webb and Diane Foster, signed where indicated. The whole thing took 12 minutes. No vows, no rings, no kiss. Just signatures and stamps and the cold machinery of bureaucracy transforming 2 strangers into legal spouses. The funds for your brother's transplant will be transferred today, Adrian said as they left the building. I've already contacted County General. They're moving him to the top of the priority list. Alara stopped walking. The afternoon sun was too bright, too normal for the surreal nightmare her life had become. That's it? It's done? The financial portion, yes. The performance portion begins tonight. My father is expecting us for dinner. Tonight? He wants to meet his new daughter-in-law. Assess whether I've made an acceptable choice. Adrian's jaw tightened slightly, the first crack in his controlled facade she'd seen. I need you to be convincing. He's looking for reasons to doubt this. What if I can't be? Convincing, I mean. He looked at her then, really looked at her, and something in his expression shifted. You signed the contract. You traded a year of your life for your brother's survival. If that's not convincing proof of commitment, I don't know what is. He walked toward a black car that had materialized at the curb, some expensive brand she didn't recognize. The driver opened the door. Adrian gestured for her to get in. Alara stood on the sidewalk, feeling the weight of what she'd done settle onto her shoulders like a physical thing. Then she got in the car. The Voss family estate was exactly what she'd feared. Sprawling, intimidating, the kind of place where poor people got arrested for trespassing. The car swept through iron gates, up a curved driveway, and stopped before a mansion that looked like it had been airlifted from a European postcard. A few rules, Adrian said as they climbed the front steps. Don't contradict me in front of my father. Don't volunteer information he doesn't ask for. And whatever you do, don't show weakness. He'll use it against both of us. You make him sound like a predator. He is. Adrian's hand found the small of her back, the first intentional touch since they'd shaken hands in the lawyer's office. It was warm, firm, probably calculated to look natural to anyone watching. Just follow my lead. The door opened before they reached it. A butler, an actual butler, ushered them into an entrance hall that could have swallowed Alara's entire apartment. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, oil paintings of dead people in gilt frames. Adrian! The voice boomed from somewhere ahead, deep, commanding, used to being obeyed. You're late. Victor Voss appeared at the top of a curved staircase. He was an older version of his son, same height, same build, same steel-colored eyes. But where Adrian's coldness felt like protective armor, Victor's felt weaponized. He descended the stairs with the confidence of a man who'd never been told no and wouldn't recognize the word if he heard it. Father. Adrian's voice went even flatter than usual. This is Alara, my wife. Victor's eyes raked over her, assessing, calculating, finding her wanting. So this is the waitress who captured my son's heart. He made it sound like an accusation. Alara felt Adrian tense beside her. She forced herself to smile. Former waitress. I quit last week. How convenient. Victor circled them like a shark. And how exactly did you two meet? Adrian has been remarkably vague on the details. At the diner where I worked, Alara said, sticking to the script they'd rehearsed in the car. He came in late one night. We started talking. It just happened. It just happened. Victor's smile was all teeth. How romantic, and how quickly did this romance progress from late-night conversation to marriage? When you know, Adrian said, his hand tightening slightly on Alara's back. I didn't see the point in waiting. No, you never do see the point in patience, or planning, or considering consequences. Victor gestured toward a dining room visible through an archway. Shall we eat? I'm eager to get to know my new daughter-in-law better. Dinner was a masterclass in psychological warfare. Victor asked questions designed to expose cracks about her family, her education, her plans for the future. Each answer she gave was dissected, analyzed, found insufficient. Adrian sat rigid beside her, his face a mask, offering no help. Halfway through the second course, Victor turned his attention fully on her. Tell me, Alara, what is it you love about my son? The question hung in the air like a trap. Because the real answer was nothing. I don't love him. This is a transaction, but that would end everything. She looked at Adrian, at his controlled expression, his tense shoulders, the way he held himself like a soldier under fire. And she realized something. He hated this. Hated his father. Hated the performance. Hated being reduced to a chess piece in whatever game Victor was playing. He's honest, she said quietly. He doesn't pretend to be something he's not. And he doesn't ask me to be something I'm not either. Adrian's eyes snapped to hers, surprise breaking through the mask for just a fraction of a second. Victor leaned back in his chair, studying them both. Interesting answer. The rest of dinner passed in tense silence. When they finally escaped to Adrian's car, Alara felt like she'd run a marathon. Her hands were shaking. Her shirt was damp with sweat. You did well, Adrian said as they pulled away from the estate. Better than I expected. Your father is a nightmare. Yes? A pause. Thank you for what you said about honesty. Alara looked out the window at the city lights blurring past. It was true. They didn't speak again until they reached the penthouse. Marcus was waiting in the lobby with a rolling suitcase. Your belongings, Mrs. Voss. I took the liberty of retrieving them from your apartment. Mrs. Voss. The name felt like a costume she couldn't take off. The penthouse was exactly as she remembered. Sterile, vast, unwelcoming. Adrian gestured to a hallway. Your room is the second door on the right, bathroom attached. Marcus stocked it with basics, but if you need anything else, make a list. Where's your room? Other end of the hall. We won't bother each other. He disappeared into his study, leaving her alone in the chrome and glass cage. Alara found her room, large, impersonal, decorated in the same monochromatic scheme as the rest of the apartment. Her suitcase sat on the bed, looking small and shabby against the expensive linens. She unpacked mechanically, hung her thrift store clothes in a closet designed for designer labels, set her phone charger on a nightstand that probably cost more than her old rent. Then she sat on the edge of the bed and felt the full weight of what she'd done crash over her. She'd sold herself, signed a contract, become a purchased wife to a man she didn't know. And she'd do it all again, would sign it 1,000 times over, because tomorrow Liam would get his transplant and she'd saved his life. That had to be enough. It had to be. Her phone buzzed. A text from the hospital. Transplant scheduled for 6 a.m. tomorrow. Donor match confirmed. Liam is prepped and ready. Alara read it 3 times, waiting for relief to hit, for the tension to release. But all she felt was numb, hollow, like she'd traded one part of herself for another and couldn't remember which piece she'd started with. She was still sitting there, phone in hand, when a soft knock came at her door. Adrian stood in the hallway, still in his suit, though he'd loosened his tie. I got the notification about your brother's surgery, he said. I thought you'd want to be there. It's at 6 a.m. I'll have Marcus arrange a car for 5. You should get some sleep. He started to leave, then paused. For what it's worth, you did something incredibly brave today. Stupid, maybe, but brave. Which part? Signing away a year of my life or lying to your father? Both. He met her eyes. And for the record, what you said at dinner about honesty, I wasn't expecting that. Why not? Because most people lie to my father. Tell him what he wants to hear. You told him something true instead. Even if the truth makes this harder? Adrian's expression shifted, something almost like respect crossing his features. Especially then. He left her alone. Alara changed into pajamas, climbed into the expensive bed, and stared at the ceiling until her alarm went off 3 hours later. Tomorrow, Liam would get his transplant, would get to live, would get the future she'd just purchased with a year of her life, and she would become whatever version of herself could survive in this glass and chrome prison with a man whose eyes reminded her of winter and whose touch felt like a business transaction. 1 year, 365 days. She'd signed the contract. Now she just had to survive it. The surgical waiting room at County General smelled like industrial disinfectant and fear. Alara had been sitting in the same plastic chair for 4 hours, watching the clock on the wall tick forward in agonizing increments. Her coffee had gone cold an hour ago. She couldn't remember if she'd actually drunk any of it. Adrian sat 3 seats away, perfectly still, scrolling through emails on his phone. He'd shown up at 5 a.m. as promised, wearing a different suit but the same expression, controlled, distant, untouchable. They'd ridden to the hospital in silence, and he'd followed her to the waiting room without being asked. Now he occupied space like a piece of furniture, present but not involved. "You don't have to stay," Alara said, breaking 4 hours of quiet. He didn't look up from his phone. "The contract specifies that I provide support during medical procedures involving your family." "That's not what I asked." "It's what I'm answering." Alara's hands tightened around the styrofoam cup. She wanted to throw it at him, wanted to scream that her brother was in surgery and she was terrified and his corporate speak bullshit was making it worse. But her throat was too tight and her eyes were burning, and if she started yelling, she might not stop. "Miss Quinn?" Dr. Reeves appeared in the doorway, still in surgical scrubs. His mask hung around his neck. There was blood on his shoe covers, small flecks that made Alara's stomach lurch. She stood too fast. The world tilted. "Is he—" "The transplant was successful. Liam's in recovery. The new kidney is functioning well. We'll monitor him closely for the next 48 hours, but barring complications, he should make a full recovery." The words hit her like a physical blow. Her knees buckled. Adrian's hand caught her elbow, steadying her, and she didn't have the energy to pull away. "Can I see him?" Her voice came out shredded. "He's still sedated. Give him another hour. But yes, you can see him." Dr. Reeves left. Alara sank back into the chair, and something inside her chest cracked open. Not relief. Not exactly. More like the absence of terror she'd been carrying for so long that she'd forgotten what it felt like to breathe without it. "Congratulations," Adrian said quietly. "Your brother is going to live. Because you paid for it. Because you signed a contract. Don't diminish what you did." She looked at him then, really looked at him. He'd loosened his tie at some point. There were shadows under his eyes that suggested he hadn't slept either. His jaw was tight, like he was grinding his teeth. "Why are you really here?" she asked. "I told you." "No, the real reason. Not the contract, not the performance. Why did you actually show up at 5 in the morning to sit in a waiting room for surgery you're not even related to?" Adrian's fingers tightened on his phone. For a moment she thought he wouldn't answer. Then, "My sister had surgery when she was 12. Appendicitis, routine procedure. I was 14. I sat in a waiting room that looked exactly like this one and watched my mother fall apart because my father was in Singapore closing a deal and couldn't be bothered to fly home." He paused. "I remember thinking that no one should have to wait alone, even for routine surgery." "Your sister, is she—" "She's fine. Married, 2 kids. Lives in Boston." He slid his phone into his pocket. "We don't talk much. She thinks I'm too much like our father. She's probably right." Alara didn't know what to say to that, so she just sat there, and he sat 3 seats away, and they waited in a silence that felt less hostile than before. When they finally let her see Liam, he was pale and groggy, but alive. So alive. His eyes found hers as she entered the recovery room, and he managed a weak smile. "Hey," he whispered. "Did it work?" "Yeah, troublemaker. It worked." She took his hand, careful of the IV lines. "You're going to be fine. You look terrible." "That's the drugs talking." "No, you really look terrible." His eyes drifted past her to where Adrian stood in the doorway. "Who's that?" Alara's throat closed. She'd planned for this conversation, rehearsed it, but all her practiced words evaporated. That's Adrian, my husband." Liam blinked slowly, processing through the medication fog. "You're what?" "We got married last week. It happened kind of fast." "How fast?" "Very fast." Liam's gaze sharpened despite the drugs. He looked at Adrian, then back at Alara, and she saw him doing the math, the sudden transplant, the mystery husband, the way she couldn't quite meet his eyes. "Ellie, what did you do?" "I saved your life." "How?" Does it matter? Yeah, it matters. His hand tightened on hers. What did you do? Adrian stepped forward before she could answer. Your sister and I met 6 months ago. We kept it quiet because of my family situation. When we heard about your condition, we decided to move the wedding up so you'd be covered under my insurance. His voice was smooth, practiced. The lie came out effortless. Everything happened fast, but it's legitimate. You don't need to worry about her. Liam stared at him for a long moment. Then he looked back at Alara, and she saw it in his face. He didn't believe the story, but he was too tired and too grateful to push. Okay, he said quietly. Okay. They stayed another hour. When Liam finally fell asleep, Ilara let Adrian guide her out of the hospital and into the waiting car. She was asleep before they'd gone 3 blocks, her head against the window, exhaustion finally dragging her under. She woke up in the penthouse, in her bed, with no memory of getting there. The clock said 2:47 p.m. She'd slept for almost 6 hours. There was a note on her nightstand in sharp, precise handwriting. Meeting with investors until 6. Marcus left food in the kitchen. Alara showered, changed, and found the kitchen. A vast space of marble countertops and appliances that probably cost more than a car. There was a covered plate in the refrigerator. Grilled chicken, roasted vegetables, something green that might have been kale. She ate mechanically, tasting nothing, then wandered the penthouse like a ghost. This was her home now. For the next year, these sterile rooms and uncomfortable furniture were where she lived. The realization settled over her like a weighted blanket. Her phone buzzed. Jessica. Girl, where are you? Your stuff is gone and there's a check for 3 months' rent on the counter. Did you get kidnapped by a rich person? Alara stared at the message. She couldn't explain this. Couldn't tell Jessica that yes, actually, she had essentially been purchased by a rich person and was now living in a glass tower pretending to be someone's wife. She typed back, got a new job, had to relocate fast. Sorry for the mystery. We'll explain when I can. Jessica's response came immediately. This is weird. Call me when you can talk. Alara turned her phone face down and explored the rest of the apartment. Adrian's study was locked. His bedroom door was closed. The living room looked like a furniture showroom. There was a gym that she'd never use and a library with books that appeared untouched. Everything was perfect. Everything was empty. She was standing at the floor-to-ceiling windows, watching the city stretch into the late afternoon when the elevator chimed. Adrian emerged, still in his suit, looking like he'd fought a battle and won through sheer refusal to lose. You're awake, he said, setting his briefcase down. Observation skills. Impressive. He loosened his tie, a gesture she was starting to recognize as his version of relaxation. There's an event tomorrow night, corporate fundraiser, black tie. We need to make an appearance. Tomorrow? I just watched my brother have surgery. I'm aware. But my father will be there, and if we don't show, he'll start asking questions. Adrian moved to the bar, poured himself 2 fingers of something amber. I had Marcus arrange for a stylist. She'll be here at noon with dress options. I don't need a stylist. I can wear what you can afford on a waitress salary won't work for this crowd. You need to look like you belong. He took a drink, winced slightly. It's not personal. It's practical. Everything with you is practical. Yes, it is. Alara crossed her arms. What happens at this fundraiser? What's the performance? We arrive together, we stay together, light physical contact, hand on the back, arm around the waist, nothing aggressive. We make conversation with other couples. We dance at least once. We leave together. He set his glass down. And we look like we actually enjoy each other's company. That's going to require acting skills I don't have. Then develop them, quickly. Adrian's eyes met hers, flat and uncompromising. My father is looking for cracks, any sign that this marriage is fraudulent, and he'll use it to remove me from the company, which means no money for your brother's continued care. So we need to be convincing. The threat wasn't even veiled. Alara felt anger spike hot in her chest. You know what would make this easier? If you acted like a human being instead of a corporate robot. I'm not programmed for warmth, Alara. You signed a contract with me, not the person you wish I was. I signed a contract with someone who said he understood what I was sacrificing, someone who showed up to the hospital this morning even though the contract didn't require it. That person had some humanity in him. Adrian's jaw tightened. That person made a mistake. Don't expect it to happen again. He walked out, disappearing into his study. The lock clicked with finality. Elara stood alone in the living room, fists clenched, breathing hard. This was going to be the longest year of her life. The stylist arrived exactly at noon the next day. A woman named Margot with severe bangs and an eye that could calculate your measurements from across a room. She brought 3 racks of dresses, each one more intimidating than the last. Adrian said you need armor, not a costume, Margot said, circling Elara like a predator. Something that says, I belong here and I'm not impressed by your money. You're what, size 4? 6, usually. We'll make a 4 work. Margot pulled a dress from the second rack, deep emerald green, simple lines, nothing flashy. Try this. Elara changed in her bedroom while Margot waited, arms crossed, radiating impatience. The dress fit like it had been designed for her body specifically. The color made her skin look less exhausted. The cut somehow made her look taller, more substantial. Better, Margot said when Elara emerged. Now walk. What? Walk across the room. I need to see how you move. Elara walked. Margot frowned. You walk like you're apologizing for taking up space. Stop it. Shoulders back, chin up. You're married to one of the most powerful men in the city. Act like it. They spent 2 hours on posture, movement, how to hold a champagne glass, how to shake hands without seeming desperate or aggressive. By the time Margot left, Elara felt like she'd been through basic training. Adrian emerged from his study at 6, already dressed for the event. Black tuxedo, perfectly tailored, making him look even more untouchable than usual. His eyes swept over her, clinical and assessing. The dress works, he said. Margot chose well. High praise. It's accurate praise. There's a difference. He adjusted his cufflinks. The car will be here in 10 minutes. Remember, we're newlyweds. We're supposed to look happy. Define happy. Smile occasionally. Laugh at my jokes even if they're not funny. Touch me like you actually want to. Basic performance. You make it sound so romantic. Romance isn't part of the contract. He moved toward the elevator, then paused. And Elara, don't drink too much. You'll need your wits about you tonight. The fundraiser was held at the Meridian Hotel, the kind of place where the doormen wore white gloves and the chandeliers cost more than houses. Adrian's hand found the small of her back as they entered, warm and firm, and she forced herself not to flinch. The ballroom was full of people who looked like they'd been born in designer clothes. Women in gowns that cost more than cars, men in tuxedos that whispered old money. Elara felt every eye turn toward them as they entered, assessing, judging, calculating their worth. Smile, Adrian murmured against her ear. You look like you're facing a firing squad. I feel like I am. They're just people. Rich people, but still people. Most of them are more insecure than you are. Somehow I doubt that. His hand tightened slightly on her back. Trust me. They moved through the crowd like sharks through water. Adrian introduced her to an endless parade of names and faces she'd never remember. She smiled. She shook hands. She made small talk about things she knew nothing about. And through it all, Adrian's hand stayed on her back, anchoring her, guiding her through the performance. Adrian. Victor Voss appeared like a storm system, cutting through the crowd. He had a woman on his arm, platinum blonde, late 40s, with a smile sharp enough to cut glass. You made it, and you brought your lovely wife. Father. Adrian's voice went even flatter. This is Elara. Elara, my father, and his companion, Vivienne. Companion? Vivienne's laugh was brittle. How quaint. We've been together for 3 years, darling, and I'm sure father will make an honest woman of you any day now. Adrian's smile didn't reach his eyes. Victor's expression hardened. Might I borrow my son for a moment? Business matters. It wasn't a question. Adrian's hand left Elara's back, and suddenly she was alone with Vivienne, who looked at her like a cat that had found a mouse. So, Vivienne said, accepting a champagne flute from a passing waiter. The waitress who stole Adrian's heart. Victor told me all about you. I'm sure he painted a very flattering picture. On the contrary, he thinks you're a gold digger who got lucky. Vivienne sipped her champagne. I told him he's wrong. Gold diggers are at least smart enough to hide their desperation. You wear yours like a neon sign. Alara's fingers tightened on her own champagne glass. I don't know what you think you know about me. I know Adrian married you in a hurry. I know you have a sick brother. I know you came from nothing, and suddenly you're living in a penthouse and wearing designer dresses. Vivian's smile widened. I also know that Adrian has never been in love in his life. So whatever arrangement you two have, it's not love, which means it's business. And business deals can always be renegotiated. Is there a point to this conversation? Just a friendly warning. Victor doesn't like surprises, and he really doesn't like people who threaten his control over his son. You're both, which makes you dangerous. Vivian leaned closer. Be careful, dear. Rich men's wives have a way of becoming inconvenient, and inconvenient people tend to disappear. She glided away, leaving Alara standing alone, heart hammering, the champagne bitter on her tongue. Adrian materialized at her elbow minutes later, his expression dark. What did Vivian say to you? Nothing important, just welcoming me to the family. Alara, she said your father thinks I'm a gold digger and that I should be careful because inconvenient people disappear. Paraphrasing, but that was the gist. Adrian's jaw clenched. She's trying to intimidate you. It's working. Don't let it. Vivian has been trying to marry my father for 3 years. She sees you as competition for resources. It's just noise. Is it? Because she seemed pretty confident that your father could make me disappear. My father is powerful, not omnipotent, and you're protected by the same contract that protects me. He can't touch you without risking everything he's built. Adrian's hand returned to her back, possessive this time. Dance with me. What? People are watching. We need to look united. Dance with me. He guided her onto the dance floor before she could protest. His hand settled on her waist, hers on his shoulder, and they moved into the rhythm of whatever classical piece the string quartet was murdering. You're tense, he said quietly. I'm terrified. Don't be. I won't let you fall. I'm not worried about falling. I'm worried about drowning. Adrian's eyes found hers, and for a moment something shifted in them, something that looked almost like understanding. I know this is hard. I know you didn't sign up for psychological warfare, but it's part of the package. My father, Vivian, everyone in this room, they're all looking for weaknesses. We can't give them any. How do you live like this? Constantly performing? Practice. And the knowledge that showing weakness gets you destroyed. His hand tightened on her waist. My father taught me that when I was 8. He's been testing me ever since. That's not normal. No, but it's my normal. And for the next year, it's yours too. They danced in silence. Alara became aware of how close they were, how his hand felt against her back, how he smelled faintly of expensive cologne and something else she couldn't identify, how his eyes, when they weren't guarded, held depths she hadn't noticed before. You're staring, he said. So are you. I'm maintaining eye contact. It's part of the performance. Is that what this is? A performance? His expression shifted, something dangerous flickering across his features. What else would it be? The music ended. They separated. The spell, if there had been one, broke. They stayed another hour making the rounds, playing their parts. When they finally left, Alara's feet ached and her face hurt from smiling. The car ride back to the penthouse was silent. Adrian stared out his window, jaw tight, lost in whatever battle he was fighting inside his head. Your father cornered you, Alara said. What did he want? To remind me that he's watching, that he doesn't believe this marriage is real, that he's looking for proof. Did you give him any? No, but he's patient. He'll keep looking. They rode the elevator up in silence. When they reached the penthouse, Adrian disappeared into his study without a word. Alara stood in the living room, still in her emerald dress, and felt the weight of the evening settle onto her shoulders. Her phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. You looked pretty tonight. Almost convinced me. Almost. V. Vivienne. Somehow she'd gotten Alara's number. The implied threat made Alara's skin crawl. She was about to delete it when another text came through, this time from Victor's number. She recognized it from the contact information Adrian had given her. My son thinks he's clever. He's not. Neither are you. This arrangement will end badly for one of you. Make sure it's not you. Alara's hand shook as she read it, then read it again. This wasn't just intimidation. This was a warning. Victor knew the marriage was fake, or at least suspected it, and he was preparing to destroy it. She knocked on Adrian's study door. No answer. She knocked again. Harder. What? His voice came through muffled, irritated. We need to talk. Tomorrow. Now. The door opened. Adrian stood there, tie loosened, shirt partially unbuttoned, glass of whiskey in hand. He looked exhausted. What's so urgent it can't wait until morning? She showed him the texts. His expression went from irritation to fury in the space of a heartbeat. When did you get these? Just now, both of them. Adrian read the messages, his grip on the phone tightening until his knuckles went white. He's escalating, faster than I expected. What does that mean? It means we're running out of time. He's going to move against us, probably soon. We need to be ready. Ready for what? For whatever he throws at us. Investigations, media leaks, attacks on your character. He'll try to prove the marriage is fraudulent, and if he succeeds, the contract becomes void, which means no money for Liam's continued treatment. Exactly. Adrian handed her phone back, ran a hand through his hair. We need to make this more convincing, more public, more real. How? I don't know yet, but we'll figure it out. He turned back toward his desk, dismissing her. Adrian, he paused. Are you scared of him? Your father? His shoulders tensed. Fear is a wasted emotion. That's not an answer. It's the only answer you're getting. He closed the door, and the lock clicked. Alara stood in the hallway, staring at the locked study door, and realized that for all the contract's protections and clauses, she'd bound herself to a man she didn't understand. A man who built walls so high she couldn't see over them. A man whose father was willing to destroy both of them to maintain control. And somewhere in all of this, she'd started to care whether he was scared or not. That was a problem. The next 3 weeks fell into a rhythm that felt less like living and more like surviving. Alara visited Liam every day. His recovery was progressing well. The doctors were pleased, his color was returning. He was starting to look like a 13-year-old kid again instead of a dying patient. But he watched her with those two knowing eyes, and she could tell he didn't believe the story about her whirlwind romance. At the penthouse, she and Adrian orbited each other like distant planets. They had breakfast together, his requirement, something about maintaining domestic routine. They attended events together, 2 more fundraisers, a gallery opening, a dinner with Adrian's business partners. They performed their roles flawlessly. In public, they were the perfect couple. In private, they barely spoke, except for the moments when the mask slipped. Like the night Alara found Adrian in the kitchen at 3 a.m., staring at a bottle of whiskey he hadn't opened. He'd looked at her with exhausted eyes and said, I can't sleep either. They'd sat at the kitchen island for an hour, not talking, just existing in the same space. It had felt more intimate than any of their public performances. Or the afternoon she'd come home crying after a particularly brutal conversation with a debt collector she'd forgotten about. Adrian had appeared in her doorway with a checkbook and said, Give me the account information. I'll handle it. When she'd protested, he'd said, It's practical. You can't focus on the performance if you're worried about creditors. But his voice had been gentle, almost kind, small cracks in the armor, moments that made her forget this was a transaction. Then Victor would call, or Vivian would send another threatening text, and the walls would slam back up. On the 23rd day of her contracted marriage, everything changed. Alara was at the hospital with Liam when her phone exploded with notifications, text messages, missed calls, voicemails. She stepped into the hallway, checked her screen, and felt the floor disappear. The headline on every news site was the same: Voss heirs secret marriage, love match, or corporate strategy. Someone had leaked the story. Not just the marriage, but the details. The speed of the wedding, the timing with Liam's transplant, the lack of any prior relationship history. They'd stopped short of calling it fraudulent, but the implication was clear. Her phone rang. Adrian. Have you seen it? His voice was ice. Yes. Don't talk to anyone. Don't answer any calls. Get to the penthouse, now. She hung up, told Liam she had to go, and fled the hospital. The lobby was already swarming with reporters. Someone must have tracked her there. Cameras flashed in her face. Questions came like bullets. Miss Quinn. Is it true you were a waitress before marrying Adrian Voss? Did you target him because of his wealth? How much is he paying you? Is your brother's illness real, or was that fabricated to gain sympathy? Alara pushed through them, heart hammering, and made it to the street. A car was waiting, Marcus at the wheel, his expression grim. She dove into the back seat, and he pulled away from the curb, leaving the reporters behind. How bad is it? She asked. Bad. Someone leaked documentation about the medical payments, bank transfers, timing of the marriage license versus the transplant date. They've built a timeline that makes it look transactional. Because it is transactional. Marcus met her eyes in the rearview mirror. Mr. Voss is handling it, but it's going to get worse before it gets better. The penthouse was under siege when they arrived. Reporters crowded the building entrance. Marcus had to drive around to a service entrance to get her inside. The elevator ride up felt like ascending to an execution. Adrian was in the living room, phone pressed to his ear, pacing like a caged animal. When he saw her, he ended the call mid-sentence. My father, he said flatly. He leaked it, used one of his board allies to plant the story with 3 different media outlets simultaneously. Why? Because he's trying to force me out. The board meets in 2 weeks to review my position. If they believe this marriage is fraudulent, they'll vote to remove me, which is exactly what he wants. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. He's been planning this, waiting for the right moment to strike. What do? We fight back. We double down on the narrative. We make this so convincing that no one can question it. How? Adrian turned to face her fully, and she saw something dangerous in his eyes, something desperate. We give them a love story, a real one, complete with all the details they're craving, how we met, how I fell for you despite our different backgrounds, how love doesn't care about money or status or any of the other bullshit they worship. That's a lie. So? They don't know that. And if we sell it well enough, they'll believe it. He moved closer, and she could see the cracks forming in his carefully controlled facade. I need you to do this, Alara. I need you to stand in front of cameras and lie through your teeth and make them believe we're real. And if I can't, then we both lose. You lose your brother's treatment. I lose everything I've built. My father wins. Is that what you want? Of course not, but then help me. His hands found her shoulders, gripping hard enough to hurt. Please, I'm asking you to help me. It was the first time he'd said please, the first time he touched her like this, desperate, uncontrolled, human. Alara looked into his winter steel eyes and saw fear there. Real fear. The kind that came from facing annihilation. Okay, she whispered. Okay, I'll do it. Relief flooded his face. Then something else. Something that looked dangerously close to gratitude. His hands loosened but didn't let go. They stood there, close enough that she could feel his breath, count his heartbeats through the tension in his grip. Thank you, he said quietly. Don't thank me yet. I'm a terrible liar. Then we'll practice. Starting now. He released her, stepped back, rebuilding his walls with visible effort. I've scheduled a press conference for tomorrow morning. We're going to tell our story, the real story. You mean the fake story? Same thing at this point. They spent the rest of the day crafting their narrative. How they'd met at the diner 6 months ago. How Adrian had been there closing a late-night deal and stopped in for coffee. How they'd started talking. How he'd come back the next night and the next. How it had built slowly, secretly, until they couldn't deny what they felt. It needs to be believable, Adrian said, pacing. What would I notice about you? What would make me come back? I have no idea. You tell me. He stopped pacing, studied her. You don't apologize for taking up space. Most people in my world do. They're constantly trying to make themselves smaller, more palatable. You don't. Even now, when you're terrified, you're meeting my eyes. That's what you'd notice? My eye contact? And the way you argued with me. That first night when I made the offer, you didn't just accept. You questioned. You pushed back. No one pushes back against me. He resumed pacing. So that's the story. I came to the diner. You were rude to me. I found it refreshing. I wasn't rude. You told me I looked like I needed decaf and a nap. That's rude. Alara almost smiled. Fair enough. They practiced for hours, rehearsing their story until it felt smooth, natural, almost true. Adrian was a surprisingly good liar. His delivery was perfect, his emotions calibrated precisely. Alara stumbled over her words, second-guessed her responses, felt the falseness of every syllable. "Stop thinking," Adrian said after her fifth attempt to describe their first kiss. "You're in your head. You need to feel it." "I can't feel something that never happened." "Then imagine it. What would that moment have been like if it had been real?" Alara closed her eyes, tried to picture it. Adrian Voss, corporate titan, leaning across a diner booth to kiss a waitress who'd been rude to him. It should have been absurd, but somehow, in her imagination, it wasn't. Somehow, it felt possible. "We were in the diner," she said slowly, eyes still closed. "Late, after closing. I was cleaning tables, and you were still sitting there, nursing your fourth cup of coffee and pretending to read contracts. I told you we were closed. You said you'd leave after one more refill. I told you that you'd already had enough caffeine to kill a horse. You laughed. Really laughed. Not the polite corporate chuckle, but actual laughter. And then you stood up and you just kissed me. No warning. No asking permission. Just kissed me like it was the most natural thing in the world." When she opened her eyes, Adrian was staring at her with an expression she couldn't read. "That's good," he said quietly. "Use that tomorrow." The press conference was scheduled for 10 a.m. at Voss Industries headquarters. Adrian's PR team had arranged everything: the backdrop, the lighting, the carefully selected journalists who'd ask softballs instead of grenades. Alara wore a simple blue dress that Margot had delivered that morning with a note. "Look honest. You're trying to convince them, not seduce them." They stood side by side in front of a wall of cameras, and Alara felt like she might vomit. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed once. A gesture of solidarity or calculation, she couldn't tell. "Good morning," Adrian said, his voice carrying across the room with practiced authority. "Thank you all for coming. I know there's been a lot of speculation about my marriage to Alara. I'm here to set the record straight." He launched into their prepared statement: the diner, the late nights, the slow build of something neither of them had expected. His delivery was flawless. Alara stood beside him, nodding at the right moments, smiling when appropriate, playing her part. Then the questions started. "Mr. Voss, can you explain the timing of the marriage in relation to Liam Quinn's transplant?" Adrian's hand tightened on hers. "When Alara and I decided to marry, her brother's condition was already critical. I have the resources to help, so I did. That's what you do when you love someone. You help their family." "Miss Quinn, do you love Adrian or do you love his money?" The question hit like a slap. Alara felt Adrian tense beside her, ready to deflect, but something in her snapped. "I love my brother," she said, her voice stronger than she'd expected. "And I'd do anything to keep him alive. That makes me a gold digger in your eyes? Fine. I don't care." But Adrian knew that about me from the beginning. He knew I'd signed up for this with my eyes open, knowing exactly what I was trading. And he respected me enough not to pretend it was something else. Silence fell across the room. Adrian's eyes widened slightly. She'd gone off script, but she couldn't stop. "You want to know if this is real?" "I don't even know what real means anymore. I know that I signed a contract with a stranger to save my brother's life. I know that stranger showed up at a hospital at 5 in the morning because he remembered what it felt like to wait alone. I know he paid off my debts without being asked. I know he's standing here right now, holding my hand, even though his father is probably watching this and planning his next attack. Is that love? I don't know, but it's real, and it's more than most of you have." She stopped talking. The room was silent. Adrian was staring at her like he'd never seen her before. Then someone started clapping. One person. Then another. Within seconds, half the room was applauding. Adrian leaned close, whispered against her ear, "That was either brilliant or suicidal. I can't tell which." "Me either." They fielded a few more questions. Then Adrian's PR director called time. As they left the podium, Victor Voss appeared at the back of the room. He caught Adrian's eye, smiled coldly, and walked out. "He's planning something," Adrian said once they were in the car. "That press conference won't be enough." "What else can we do?" "I don't know, but we need to be ready." Back at the penthouse, Alara collapsed onto the couch. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her shaky and exhausted. Adrian disappeared into his study, presumably to deal with the fallout. Her phone buzzed, a text from Liam. "Saw the press conference. You're either the best liar in the world or you actually care about him. I can't tell which. Alara stared at the message. Neither could she. That night she couldn't sleep. She wandered the penthouse at 2 a.m., found Adrian in the kitchen again, staring at another unopened bottle of whiskey. "Bad night?" she asked. "Every night is a bad night." He glanced at her. "You did well today, at the press conference." "I went off script." "I know, it was better for it. More authentic." Alara pulled out a stool, sat across from him. "Can I ask you something?" "Depends on the question." "Why did you really show up at the hospital? Not the sister story, the real reason." Adrian's fingers traced the label on the whiskey bottle. "Because I thought you shouldn't have to go through that alone. Even if we're just whatever this is, no one should have to sit in a waiting room and wonder if someone they love is going to die. That's almost human of you. Don't get used to it." They sat in silence. The city glowed outside the windows, indifferent to their small drama. "I'm tired," Alara said finally, "of performing, of lying, of not knowing what's real anymore." "Welcome to my life." Adrian finally opened the whiskey, poured 2 glasses, slid one across to her. "For what it's worth, what you said today about trading your life for your brother's, that was real. Maybe the realest thing either of us has said since this started. Is that supposed to be comforting?" "No, just true." Alara took a sip of whiskey. It burned going down. "Your father is going to come after us harder now, isn't he?" "Yes." "What's he capable of?" Adrian's expression darkened. "More than you want to know." Her phone buzzed. Another text from an unknown number. She opened it and felt her blood turn to ice. It was a photograph of her and Adrian taken at the press conference. They were holding hands, looking at each other, and the caption read, "How much is he paying you to look at him like that?" But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was attached below. A scanned document. A contract clause. One she'd never seen before. In the event that Party B, Alara Quinn, attempts to terminate this agreement prior to the 1-year mark, Party A, Adrian Voss, reserves the right to extend the contractual period by an additional 2 years at his sole discretion, with Party B forfeiting all rights to early termination or legal recourse. Alara's hands shook as she read it, then read it again. It was dated and signed, Adrian's signature clear at the bottom. "What is this?" She shoved her phone across the counter to Adrian. He looked at the screen, went absolutely still. "Where did you get this?" "Someone just sent it to me. Is it real?" "It was in the original draft. I had it removed before you signed." "But you wrote it. You actually drafted a clause that would trap me here for 3 years. It was a precaution in case what? In case I tried to escape? In case I realized I'd sold myself to a monster?" Alara stood, backing away from him. "You were planning to trap me from the beginning." "No. I considered it, then decided against it. That's why it's not in the final contract." "But you thought about it. You actually sat there and thought, how can I make sure she can't leave? And you drafted legal language to make it happen." Adrian's jaw clenched. "I draft contingency plans for everything. It's what I do. But I didn't use it. I chose not to." "That's supposed to make this better?" "It should make you understand that I'm capable of making the right choice, even when it's not in my best interest. Or it should make me understand that you see me as an asset you considered permanently acquiring." Alara grabbed her phone. "Who sent this? Your father?" "Probably, or someone working for him." "So he's trying to make me hate you?" "Yes. And it's working." Alara wanted to scream, wanted to throw something, wanted to take that unopened whiskey bottle and smash it against the floor-to-ceiling windows until something broke. "I can't do this. I can't live like this, not knowing what's real and what's manipulation." "Then what do you want? You want out? Fine, walk away. Forfeit the contract. Let your brother's treatment lapse. See how long he survives without the anti-rejection medications I'm paying for." The words hit like physical blows. Alara felt tears burn behind her eyes. "You're using him against me. You're using my dying brother to keep me trapped here." "I'm stating facts. That's not the same thing." "It's exactly the same thing." They stood on opposite sides of the kitchen island, breathing hard, years of walls and defenses between them. Then Adrian's phone rang. He glanced at the screen and his expression shifted to something close to panic. "It's the hospital. He answered, listened, and Alara watched the color drain from his face. When? He asked. Pause. How bad? Another pause. We'll be there in 10 minutes. He hung up, looked at Alara with eyes that had gone flat and dead. It's Liam, he said quietly. He's in rejection. They're trying to stabilize him now, but he didn't finish. He didn't have to. Alara's legs gave out. She hit the floor hard, and Adrian was there, catching her, his arms around her, holding her together as she shattered. No, she whispered. No, no, no. He was fine. He was getting better. Sometimes it just happens. Rejection can occur weeks after transplant, even with all the medications. Adrian's voice was gentle, carefully controlled. But they're good doctors. They'll fight for him. Will they? Or will they decide he's not worth saving? Will they look at his chart and see a charity case whose contract wife just screamed at her husband and decide to let him go? That's not how medicine works. That's exactly how everything works in your world. Adrian pulled her closer, and she didn't have the strength to push him away. We're going to the hospital, right now, and we're going to sit in that waiting room together, and we're going to wait for news. And if you want to hate me afterward, fine. But right now, I'm here. I'm not leaving you alone. Alara couldn't speak, could only nod against his chest. They drove to the hospital in silence. Alara's hands wouldn't stop shaking. Adrian's jaw was locked so tight she could see the muscles jumping in his cheek. When they arrived, he took her hand, not for show, not for performance, but for support, and they walked into County General together. Dr. Reeves met them in the ICU waiting room. His expression was grave. Liam's body is rejecting the kidney, he said without preamble. We've started him on high-dose immunosuppressants, but it's aggressive. The next 72 hours will be critical. Can I see him? Alara's voice came from far away. He's sedated. We've got him on a ventilator to give his body a chance to stabilize. You can see him, but he won't know you're there. Dr. Reeves led them to Liam's room. He looked so small again, so fragile. All the progress he'd made was gone, erased by his body turning against itself. Alara sat beside his bed and took his hand. It was cold. Adrian stood in the doorway, watching. After a moment, he pulled out his phone, made a call. Get me Dr. Sarah Chen from Johns Hopkins, he said into the phone. Tell her it's Adrian Voss and it's urgent. I don't care what time zone she's in. Wake her up. He spent the next hour on the phone, calling specialists across the country, pulling strings, leveraging every connection he had. Alara listened to him work and realized something. This wasn't performance. This was real. He was fighting for Liam like his life depended on it. By dawn, Adrian had assembled a team of 3 transplant specialists, all flying in to consult on Liam's case. They'd arrive within 12 hours. You didn't have to do this, Alara said quietly when he finally hung up. Yes, I did. He sat in the chair beside her, exhausted. Because you were right. What you said at the press conference. About me showing up because I remember what it's like to wait alone. That was real, and this is real too. Why? Because somewhere in the middle of this arrangement, I started giving a damn. And I hate it. I hate that I care whether you're okay. I hate that I can't sleep when you're upset. I hate that when I saw that clause in the leaked document, my first thought wasn't, how will this affect the contract, but how will this hurt her? He ran a hand through his hair. I'm not supposed to care. Caring is a weakness in my world. But here we are. Alara stared at him. Are you saying? I'm saying I don't know what this is anymore. I don't know if it's real or if I'm just good at convincing myself of lies. But I know that I'm sitting in this hospital room at 6 in the morning after flying in specialist doctors because your brother matters to you, and you somehow started mattering to me. Make of that what you will. They sat in silence, holding vigil over a 13-year-old kid fighting for his life. And somewhere in that silence, with fluorescent lights humming overhead and monitors beeping their steady rhythm, Alara reached out and took Adrian's hand. Not for show, not for cameras, just because she needed to hold on to something real. And he held on back. Outside the hospital room, dawn broke over the city. Inside, 2 people who'd signed a contract to fake a marriage sat hand in hand, waiting to see if love could grow in the ruins of a transaction. Neither of them knew the answer, but they were holding on anyway. 72 hours felt like 72 years. Alara didn't leave the hospital except to shower and change clothes, Adrian stayed with her, working from his laptop in the ICU waiting room, fielding calls from his office in hushed tones that suggested the world outside was burning and he couldn't bring himself to care. The specialists he'd flown in worked around the clock, adjusting medications, monitoring Liam's vitals, searching for the combination that would convince his body to accept the kidney instead of destroying it. On the second night, Dr. Chen from Johns Hopkins emerged from Liam's room with tired eyes and something that might have been cautious optimism. "The rejection is slowing," she said. "We've adjusted his immunosuppressant protocol. If his numbers continue to improve over the next 24 hours, we might be past the worst of it." Elora sagged against Adrian, relief hitting her so hard her legs went weak. His arm came around her waist, holding her upright, and she didn't have the energy to question whether it was performance or something else. "Thank you," Adrian said to Dr. Chen. "Whatever you need, equipment, medication, additional staff, you have it." Dr. Chen nodded, too professional to show surprise at the blank check, and disappeared back into the ICU. "He's going to make it," Elora whispered against Adrian's shoulder. "He's going to be okay." "Looks like it." Adrian's voice was rough, like he hadn't slept in days, which he probably hadn't. "You should eat something. You've had nothing but coffee for 48 hours. "I'm not hungry." "That wasn't a request. There's a cafeteria on the second floor. We're going." He guided her through the hospital corridors, his hand never leaving the small of her back. They ate terrible sandwiches and worse coffee in a fluorescent-lit cafeteria that smelled like industrial cleaner and desperation. Elora managed 3 bites before pushing her plate away. "I can't stop thinking about that clause," she said quietly, "the one your father leaked." Adrian set down his coffee. "It's not in the contract you signed. It has no legal bearing." "But you wrote it. You considered trapping me here for 3 years." "Yes, I did." He met her eyes, unflinching. "When I first drafted the contract, I was thinking strategically. You were a resource I needed to secure. The clause was insurance against you becoming difficult or trying to leverage your position. It was cold. It was calculating. It was everything my father taught me to be. And then I met you. Watched you sign that contract with hands that wouldn't stop shaking because you were terrified, but you did it anyway. Watched you sit in your brother's hospital room reading Batman comics to a dying kid with a voice that kept breaking, and I realized that trapping you would be, He paused, searching for words. "Wrong. Not illegal, not even impractical, just wrong." Elora studied his face, trying to find the lie, but his expression was open in a way she'd never seen before, exhausted and raw and completely unguarded. "So you removed it," she said. "So I removed it. Had my lawyers draft a new version without any extension clauses. You can walk away after 12 months, no strings, no conditions. That was the deal, and I've kept it. Your father knows that bothers you. That's why he leaked it. He's trying to make me doubt you." "Yes, he's good at finding pressure points." Adrian's jaw tightened. "He's also planning something bigger. That leak was just the opening salvo." "How do you know?" "Because I know him. He doesn't do anything by half measures. If he's moving against us, he's going to hit hard and hit where it hurts most." Elora's phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. "Check your email. You deserve to know the truth about who you married." Her stomach dropped. "Adrian?" "What?" She showed him the text. His expression went flat and cold. "Don't open it," he said. "It's bait." "What if it's something I need to know?" "Then I'll tell you myself. But whatever's in that email, my father put it there. It's designed to hurt you, to make you doubt me. Don't give him the satisfaction." Elora's finger hovered over her email app. Every instinct screamed that Adrian was right, that opening it would be playing into Victor's hands. But another part of her, the part that had been lied to and manipulated for weeks, needed to know what was being hidden. She opened the email. There was no message, just an attachment. A PDF file labeled Voss_background_report_Quinn_E.pdf. Her hands shook as she downloaded it. "Elora, don't..." She opened the file. It was a background check. On her. Pages and pages of her life reduced to bullet points and data. Her employment history, her credit score, her debts, photos of the apartment she'd shared with Jessica, photos of her at work at the diner. photos of her at the hospital with Liam. And at the end, a highlighted section labeled Subject Viability Assessment. Subject demonstrates required characteristics for targeted recruitment: financial desperation, family obligation, low social capital, minimal external support network. Subject's brother's medical crisis provides optimal leverage point. Psychological profile suggests subject will comply with contractual terms due to combination of guilt, fear, and protective instinct toward sibling. Risk of emotional attachment, low. Subject's background and personality type indicate she will maintain transactional boundaries. Recommendation: approved for acquisition. The words swam in front of Ilara's eyes. She read them again, then again. You had me investigated. Her voice came out flat, dead. Adrian's face had gone pale. Ilara, before you ever made the offer, before you ever called me, you had someone compile a psychological profile on me to determine if I was desperate enough to sign your contract. It's standard due diligence. I investigate everyone I do business with. I'm not a business deal. I'm a person. She stood, the chair scraping loudly against the linoleum. You calculated exactly how desperate I was. You identified my leverage point, my dying brother, and you used it. You hunted me like prey. That's not... It wasn't like that. Risk of emotional attachment, low. She read the words aloud, voice shaking. You chose me because you thought I was broken enough to sell myself, but damaged enough that I'd never actually care about you. I was the perfect victim, desperate, isolated, easy to control. Adrian stood too, hands raised like he was approaching a wounded animal. When I first started looking for someone to fill the role, yes, I was thinking strategically, but that report was compiled before I met you, before you knew what? That I had feelings? That I was more than data points on a psychological profile? Before I knew you'd matter to me. The words came out like he'd torn them from somewhere deep. Yes, I had you investigated. Yes, I chose you based on that report. But the person in that report isn't the person standing in front of me. And what I feel for you now has nothing to do with risk assessments or leverage points or any of the cold calculated bullshit I told myself when this started. How am I supposed to believe that? How am I supposed to believe anything you say when I know you spent weeks analyzing me like a lab rat before you ever said hello? Because I'm standing here telling you the truth. Because I could lie and say the report doesn't exist, but I'm not. Because I've been trying, failing, but trying to be something other than what my father made me. Ilara's phone buzzed again. Another text from the same unknown number. There's more. Keep reading. She scrolled down in the PDF, found another highlighted section near the end. Contingency protocols. In the event subject becomes emotionally compromised or attempts to deviate from contractual terms, recommended approach is systematic isolation. Remove access to brother's medical care team. Limit communication with external support network. Apply financial pressure through controlled debt collection. Subject's psychological profile indicates she will capitulate to pressure rather than risk brother's well-being. If necessary, threaten to expose contractual nature of marriage to subject's brother, leveraging familial guilt as additional control mechanism. The cafeteria tilted around her. Ilara gripped the table edge, trying to breathe through the nausea rising in her throat. You had a plan. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. For if I stopped cooperating, for if I started caring, you were going to isolate me, threaten Liam, use my guilt against me. Those protocols were drafted by my security team as worst-case scenarios. I never authorized them. I never intended to use them. But they exist. Someone sat down and wrote out step-by-step instructions for destroying me psychologically, and you signed off on the report. I didn't sign off on... Your signature is at the bottom of page 12. Adrian grabbed the phone from her hands, scrolled to page 12. His face went from pale to ashen. This is forged. I never saw this section. My father must have... Stop! Ilara backed away from him. Stop lying. Stop making excuses. I'm done. Ilara, listen to me. No. You listen to me. She was shaking now, fury and betrayal coursing through her veins like poison. I signed that contract because I was desperate, because I had no choice. And you knew that. You calculated it. You identified every weakness I had, and you exploited it. You didn't give me an opportunity. You gave me an ultimatum dressed up as a choice. That's not fair. Fair? You want to talk about fair? Her voice rose, loud enough that other cafeteria patrons were turning to stare. You had me psychologically profiled like I was a corporate acquisition. You drafted contingency plans to isolate me from my dying brother if I didn't perform well enough. And now you're standing here acting wounded because I'm angry about it? Adrian's hands clenched into fists at his sides. I was trying to protect myself. I was trying to maintain control in a situation where my father was threatening everything I'd built. Yes, I approached this like a business deal because that's the only way I know how to approach anything, but I never used those protocols. I never hurt you. I never... You hurt me every day. Elara's voice broke. Every time you looked at me, and I wondered if what I saw was real or if it was part of the performance. Every time you touched me, and I couldn't tell if it was for cameras or if you actually wanted to. Every time I started to feel something and had to remind myself that I was just a resource you'd acquired. That hurts. And knowing that you planned it that way from the beginning makes it so much worse. I didn't plan to feel this way about you. I didn't plan for any of this to become real. How am I supposed to know what's real? How am I supposed to trust anything when the foundation of this entire arrangement is built on you calculating exactly how to manipulate me? Adrian opened his mouth, closed it. No words came out. Because there was no answer, no defense. The report existed, the protocols existed. His signature was at the bottom. Elara turned and walked out of the cafeteria. She made it to a bathroom before the tears started. Hot, angry tears that burned her eyes and choked her throat. She locked herself in a stall and sobbed into her hands, trying to muffle the sound. Someone knocked on the stall door. Miss, are you all right? Fine, Elara managed. I'm fine. The person left. Elara stayed in the stall until her tears ran out, until she was empty and hollow and numb. Then she washed her face, avoided her reflection in the mirror, and went back to the ICU waiting room. Adrian wasn't there. She sat in the molded plastic chair that had become her second home and stared at the wall. Her phone buzzed again. She ignored it. Buzzed again. She pulled it out, ready to throw it against the wall. But the text wasn't from the unknown number. It was from Diane Foster, her lawyer. We need to talk. Now. Don't respond to this text. Come to my office. Alone. Elara stared at the message. Diane knew. Somehow she knew what had happened, which meant this was worse than she thought. She told the nurse at the ICU desk that she'd be back in an hour, took a cab to Diane's office downtown. The lawyer was waiting in her conference room, looking grim. Sit, Diane said. Elara sat. Diane slid a folder across the table. Victor Voss's legal team contacted me 3 hours ago. They're filing suit to invalidate your marriage on grounds of fraud. They have evidence, the background report, financial records showing the medical payments, testimony from hospital staff about the timing. They're claiming you and Adrian conspired to defraud the Voss family and that the marriage was never legitimate. Can they do that? They can try. Whether they'll succeed depends on how good their evidence is and how well we can defend against it. Diane's expression hardened. But there's something else, something worse. How could it possibly be worse? They're also filing criminal charges. Against you specifically, wire fraud, conspiracy to commit fraud. They're alleging that you targeted Adrian with the intent to extort money from the Voss family under false pretenses of marriage. The room spun. Elara gripped the edge of the table. That's insane. He approached me. He made the offer. And you signed a contract that you knew was fraudulent. In the eyes of the law, that makes you complicit. Diane leaned forward. Elara, if they succeed with these charges, you could face federal prison time, 5 to 10 years, maybe more if they can prove conspiracy. But the contract was his idea. It doesn't matter whose idea it was. You benefited financially. Your brother received medical care you couldn't otherwise afford. A prosecutor could argue you had motive and means. And with Victor Voss's resources behind the case, they'll find the best prosecutors money can buy. Elara couldn't breathe. The walls were closing in. What do I do? You have 2 options. Option 1, fight it. We go to trial, we defend the contract as legitimate. We argue that your marriage is real despite the circumstances of its origin. It'll be expensive, it'll be public, and there's no guarantee we'll win. What's option 2? Diane's expression went carefully blank. You cooperate with Victor's legal team. You testify that Adrian coerced you into the marriage. You provide evidence of his manipulation and fraud. In exchange, they drop the criminal charges and you walk away with immunity. You want me to destroy him. I want you to protect yourself. Adrian Voss is a billionaire with an army of lawyers. You're a former waitress with $57 in your bank account. This fight isn't fair, and you're not going to win it by playing fair. If I testify against him, what happens to Liam's medical care? Diane looked away. The contract becomes void. All financial support ends immediately. So my brother dies. Your brother might die anyway if you're in federal prison and can't advocate for his care. At least this way, you're free. You can work. You can find other options. There are no other options, you know that. I've exhausted every option. Adrian is the only reason Liam is alive. Then you need to decide what you're willing to sacrifice. Your freedom or your brother's life. Because Victor is coming for you, and he's not going to stop until he destroys one of you. Alara stood on shaking legs. I need to think. You have 48 hours. After that, the charges will be filed formally, and it becomes a lot harder to negotiate. Diane walked her to the door. I'm sorry. I know this isn't what you signed up for. What I signed up for was saving my brother's life. Everything else is just details. She left the office, walked 3 blocks before her legs gave out. She sat on a bench in a park she didn't recognize and stared at nothing. People walked past, normal people with normal problems, living normal lives. She envied them so much it hurt. Her phone rang. Adrian. She didn't answer. It rang again. Again. On the 4th call, she picked up. Where are you? His voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant he was barely holding it together. Does it matter? Yes, it matters. My father is moving against us. I just got notification that he's filing suit. We need to coordinate our defense. There is no our defense. There's your defense and my federal prison sentence. Silence. Then, what are you talking about? He's charging me with fraud, wire fraud, conspiracy. My lawyer says I could get 5 to 10 years. Adrian swore viciously. That son of a bitch. He's going after you to get to me. No. He's going after me because I'm the weak link, because I'm expendable, because you calculated that I was desperate enough to sign that contract but too damaged to ever fight back. That's not true, isn't it? You had me profiled. You knew exactly what you were getting. Someone isolated, someone with no resources, someone who couldn't fight back even if she wanted to. Alara, listen to me. I'm not going to let him do this to you. I'll fight this. I'll get the best lawyers money can buy. Your lawyer can't keep me out of prison. The only thing that can keep me out of prison is if I testify against you. If I tell them you coerced me, that you manipulated me, that the marriage was your fraud, not mine. The silence on the other end of the line was absolute. They offered you immunity, Adrian said finally, in exchange for your testimony. Yes, and you're considering it. I'm considering staying out of federal prison. Yes. If you do that, the contract becomes void. Liam's medical care ends. You understand that, right? I understand that if I go to prison, his medical care ends anyway because I won't be there to advocate for him. So either way, he's fucked. The only difference is whether I'm free to at least try to help him. Adrian's breathing was audible through the phone, harsh, uneven. There has to be another way. If there is, I haven't found it, and I'm running out of time. Alara closed her eyes. Why did you do it, Adrian? Why did you choose me? Of all the people you could have approached, why me? Because you were strong enough to survive it, because you had something worth fighting for, because when I read that profile, I saw someone who wouldn't break even when the world tried to break her. And look how well that worked out. Alara, please, don't do this. Don't let him win. He's already won. The moment you signed that background check, he won. The moment I signed that contract, he won. This was always his game. We were just pieces on his board. She hung up, turned off her phone, sat on the bench until the sun started setting and the park emptied and a security guard told her they were closing. She went back to the hospital, sat beside Liam's bed. He was awake now, groggy but aware. The crisis had passed. The rejection was under control. He was going to live. Hey, he said when he saw her. You look like hell. Thanks, troublemaker. You look pretty rough yourself. The doctor said I'm getting better, that I get to go home soon. He paused. Where's home now? Your place or his? Alara's throat tightened. I don't know yet. Ellie, what's going on? And don't say nothing. I can see it in your face. She couldn't tell him, couldn't explain that she'd sold herself to save him, and now that sale was being used to destroy both of them. Just some legal stuff with Adrian's family. Nothing for you to worry about. Is it about the marriage? About it being fake? Alara's eyes snapped to his. What? I'm not stupid. I know you didn't fall in love with some rich guy in 6 months and never mention him once. I know the timing of the wedding, and my transplant isn't a coincidence. I know you did something crazy to save me. Liam's hand found hers. And I know whatever you did, you're regretting it now. I don't regret saving your life. But you regret the cost. The cost doesn't matter. You're alive. That's what matters. It matters to me. His grip tightened. I don't want you to destroy yourself for me. I don't want you to go to prison or lose your life or whatever other horrible thing is happening because you were trying to save mine. How do you know about prison? I heard the nurses talking. They said Adrian's dad is filing charges, that you might get arrested. His voice cracked. Ellie, you can't go to prison. You can't. I'm not going to prison. I promise. How can you promise that? Because I'm going to do whatever it takes to make sure I'm here for you, even if that means making choices I don't want to make. Liam stared at her, understanding dawning in his two old eyes. You're going to testify against him. You're going to say he forced you. I don't know what I'm going to do yet. But you're thinking about it. I can see it. He pulled his hand away. Don't. Please. Whatever he did, don't destroy him to save yourself. Why not? He'd do it to me. He probably planned for it. Because you care about him. I can see that too. The way you talk about him, the way your voice changes when you say his name. You care about him, and if you destroy him, you'll destroy part of yourself. Better than federal prison. Is it? Liam's eyes held hers. I've been dying for months. I know what it's like to lose pieces of yourself. To watch parts of you disappear until you don't recognize who's left. If you betray him to save me, that's what'll happen to you. You'll lose the part of yourself that can still trust people, that can still love. And then I'll have cost you everything. You haven't cost me anything. I've cost you everything. Your money, your freedom, your happiness, and now maybe your integrity. He turned his head away. I should have just died. It would have been easier. Don't you dare say that. Alara grabbed his face, forced him to look at her. Don't you dare. You are worth every sacrifice I've made, every single one, and I'd make them again in a heartbeat. Even if it means prison? Even if it means prison. They sat in silence. Outside the window, the city lights were coming on, turning the darkness into a glittering sprawl of life and movement. What does your gut say? Liam asked finally. About Adrian. About whether he meant to hurt you or if he just screwed up. Alara thought about the hospital waiting room at 3 a.m., about Adrian calling specialists in the middle of the night, about the way he'd held her hand when Liam went into rejection, not for cameras, but because they both needed to hold on to something real. My gut says he's a damaged person who was raised by a monster and learned all the wrong lessons about how to survive, and that somewhere in the middle of this nightmare, he started trying to learn different lessons, better ones. She paused. But I don't know if that's enough. If trying is enough when the damage is already done. Maybe trying is all anyone can do. When did you get so wise? Around the time I almost died. Facing mortality does that to you. Alara's phone buzzed. She'd turned it back on at some point without realizing. A text from Adrian. My father just held a press conference. You need to see this. She pulled up the video on her phone. Victor Voss stood behind a podium, cameras flashing, looking every inch the grieving father. It's with a heavy heart that I address you today, Victor said, his voice perfectly calibrated for maximum sympathy. My son, Adrian, has been the victim of a calculated fraud. A young woman, Alara Quinn, specifically targeted him with the intent to extract money from our family under false pretenses of marriage. We have evidence, financial records, background checks, testimony from hospital staff, that proves this marriage was never legitimate. It was a con. And Adrian, in his desire to help someone he thought was in genuine need, fell victim to it. Alara's blood turned to ice. We are filing both civil and criminal charges against Miss Quinn, Victor continued. And while I take no pleasure in this, I cannot allow my family to be victimized by those who would exploit our generosity. I hope this serves as a warning to others who might attempt similar schemes. The Voss family will not be taken advantage of. We will protect our own. Thank you. The video ended. Elara stared at the screen, trying to process what she'd just seen. Victor had flipped the script entirely. He'd made her the predator and Adrian the victim. He'd positioned himself as the protective father going after the gold digger who'd conned his son. That manipulative bastard, Liam breathed. He's making you look like the villain. Because to him, I am the villain. I'm the thing that got between him and his control over Adrian. Elara's hands shook. And now everyone believes it. Look at the comments. She scrolled through the responses flooding social media. Thousands of people calling her a con artist, a gold digger, a predator who targeted a grieving billionaire, death threats, rape threats, threats against Liam. Her phone rang. Diane. Have you seen it? The lawyer asked without preamble. Yes. Then you understand what we're dealing with. Victor has shaped the narrative. In the court of public opinion, you're already guilty, which means we need to move fast. The immunity deal is still on the table, but it won't be for long. Once the public turns against you completely, you lose all negotiating power. How long do I have? 24 hours. Maybe less. Victor is moving for an emergency hearing to freeze all assets related to your brother's medical care. If he succeeds, Liam's treatment stops immediately. The floor dropped out from under Elara. He can't do that. He can, and he is. He's arguing that all payments made under a fraudulent contract should be reversed, including medical expenses. But Liam will die. That's not Victor's concern. His concern is punishing you and Adrian. Everything else is collateral damage. Elara couldn't breathe. The room was spinning. What do I do? You take the deal, you testify, you save yourself, and you hope that once you're clear of this, you can find another way to help your brother. There is no other way. Then you'd better start praying for a miracle, because that's the only thing that's going to save you both. Diane hung up. Elara sat beside Liam's bed, phone in her trembling hands, and felt the walls closing in from all sides. Her phone buzzed again. Another text from Adrian. I'm coming to the hospital. We need to talk, face to face. She typed back, don't? There's nothing left to say. His response came immediately. There's everything left to say. I'm not letting my father destroy you. You can't stop him. Watch me. 20 minutes later, Adrian walked into Liam's hospital room. He looked like he'd aged a decade in the past few hours. Shadows under his eyes, tie loosened, jacket missing, shirt wrinkled. He looked human, broken, real. Out, he said to Elara, his voice leaving no room for argument. Adrian, you need to talk, Liam interrupted. Both of you, alone. I'll be fine for 10 minutes. Adrian led Elara to an empty consultation room down the hall, closed the door, locked it. My father is lying, he said without preamble. Everything he said in that press conference is a lie. You didn't target me. You didn't con me. I approached you. I made the offer. I drafted the contract. And I'm prepared to testify to all of that in court. Your testimony won't matter. He has the background report. The evidence makes it look like I seduced you. Then we'll prove this timeline. Show that the investigation happened before we met. Demonstrate that I pursued you, not the other way around. It doesn't matter. Public opinion is already against me. The jury will see what they want to see. A poor waitress who manipulated a rich man. Adrian's hands clenched into fists. I won't let him do this to you. You can't stop him. He's too powerful. He has too many resources, and he's willing to destroy both of us to win. Then we destroy him first. Elara stared at him. What? We go nuclear. We expose everything. His affairs, his business dealings, every dirty secret he's ever kept. We burn his empire to the ground and salt the earth behind us. That's insane. He'll retaliate. He's already retaliating. What do you think this is? He's trying to put you in prison. He's trying to kill your brother by cutting off his medical care. There's no escalation left. We're already in full-scale war. And if we fight back, what happens to Liam? His care gets cut off anyway while we're battling in court. Adrian went still. I'll continue paying for it. Out of my personal accounts. Separate from the company. My father can't touch those. He'll find a way. He always finds a way. Then we make sure he's too busy defending himself to come after you. Adrian moved closer, his eyes burning with something fierce and desperate. I'm not going to let you go to prison for something I orchestrated. I'm not going to let you take the fall for my father's vendetta. And I'm sure as hell not going to let your brother die because I was too much of a coward to stand up to the man who's been controlling me my entire life. This isn't about courage. This is about survival. Sometimes they're the same thing. His hands found her shoulders, gripping hard. I need you to trust me. One more time. I know I don't deserve it. I know I've lied and manipulated and done every cold, calculated thing my father taught me to do. But I'm asking you to trust me anyway. Let me fight for you. Let me be the person I should have been from the beginning. Elara looked into his winter steel eyes and saw something she'd never seen before. Not calculation or control or corporate strategy, but raw, unfiltered fear. Fear of losing her. Fear of becoming his father. Fear that he'd already destroyed the one real thing he'd found in a lifetime of transactions. If I trust you and you're wrong, we both lose everything, she said quietly. If you don't trust me, we've already lost. They stood in the consultation room, inches apart, the weight of impossible choices pressing down on them. Elara's phone buzzed, a text from Diane. Victor's legal team is filing the emergency motion in 1 hour. If you're going to take the deal, it has to be now. She showed Adrian the text. His jaw clenched. Don't do it, please. Give me a chance to fight this. With what? You said it yourself. He controls the company. He controls the resources. What do you have that he doesn't? I have the truth. And I have something he lost a long time ago. The ability to actually give a damn about another person. His voice dropped. I care about you, Elara. Not as an asset. Not as a resource. As a person. A person who's brave enough to sacrifice everything for someone she loves. A person who calls me on my bullshit and doesn't apologize for taking up space. A person who made me remember what it feels like to be human instead of just functional. That's not enough. Caring isn't enough when his lawyers are filing criminal charges. Then let me prove it's enough. Let me show you that I'm willing to lose everything, the company, the money, the life I've built, if it means keeping you and Liam safe. You're asking me to gamble my brother's life on your good intentions. I'm asking you to bet on me. One last time. Elara closed her eyes, felt the tears she'd been holding back finally spill over. I don't know if I can. Yes, you can, because you're the strongest person I've ever met. And because deep down, you know I'm telling the truth. His forehead rested against hers. I love you. I know I'm not supposed to. I know it wasn't part of the contract. But somewhere between the hospital waiting rooms and the 3 a.m. whiskey and the lies we've been telling everyone else, I fell in love with you. And I'm not going to let my father take that away from me. The words hung in the air between them. Elara opened her eyes, looked into his, and saw something that terrified her more than prison or poverty or any of Victor's threats. She saw the truth. I don't know how to do this, she whispered. I don't know how to trust you when everything started with manipulation. Neither do I, but maybe we figure it out together. Her phone buzzed again. Diane. Time's up. I need your answer. Now. Elara looked at the message, then at Adrian, then back at the message. She thought about Liam, recovering in his hospital bed, about the fluorescent lights and the beeping machines and all the impossible choices that had led her to this moment. She thought about the contract she'd signed with shaking hands, about the background report that had reduced her to data points, about all the ways Adrian had calculated and manipulated and controlled. But she also thought about the way he'd shown up at the hospital at 5 a.m., about the specialists he'd flown in without being asked, about the way his hand had held hers when the world was falling apart. She made her choice. She typed back to Diane. Tell Victor's team I'm not taking the deal, I'm fighting. Diane's response was immediate. Are you insane? You'll lose everything, maybe, but at least I'll lose it fighting instead of running. She showed Adrian the message. The relief that flooded his face was so profound it almost broke her. Thank you, he breathed. Don't thank me yet. We might both end up in prison. Then at least we'll be there together. He kissed her then, not for cameras, not for performance, but because they were out of time and out of options, and maybe, somewhere in the wreckage of this disaster, they'd found something worth fighting for. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Elara's phone was ringing. Diane again. She didn't answer. Instead, she took Adrian's hand and led him back to Liam's room. Her brother looked up as they entered, saw their clasped hands, and managed a weak smile. "So you're going down swinging," he said. "Looks like it." "Good. I'd expect nothing less." Liam looked at Adrian. "You hurt her again, and I don't care how rich you are or how many lawyers you have. I'll find a way to make you regret it." Adrian's mouth twitched into something almost like a smile. "Noted." Alara's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, text messages, social media mentions. She glanced at the screen and felt her stomach drop. The headline on every news site was the same. Victor Voss files emergency motion to freeze Alara Quinn's assets. Liam Quinn's medical care in jeopardy. Below it, a statement from Victor's legal team. All financial support for Liam Quinn's ongoing medical treatment will cease effective immediately pending investigation into fraudulent marriage claims. The Voss family will not continue to fund medical care obtained through deceptive means. Alara's vision narrowed to a pinpoint. She couldn't breathe, couldn't think. The room was spinning and she was falling and... "Hey!" Adrian's hand on her face, forcing her to look at him. "Breathe, look at me. Breathe." She gasped in air. Once, twice. "He's cutting off Liam's care," she managed. "Right now, effective immediately." "No, he's not." Adrian pulled out his phone, made a call. "Dr. Reeves? It's Adrian Voss. I need you to listen very carefully. My father is going to call you and instruct you to cease all treatment for Liam Quinn. I need you to ignore that instruction. All of Liam's care will be paid for through my personal accounts, not the company. I'm sending you new account information right now. Use those for all future billing. Understand?" A pause. Then Adrian's shoulders relaxed fractionally. "Thank you. I'll have my lawyer send over the paperwork within the hour." He hung up, looked at Alara. "Liam's care continues. My father can't touch my personal wealth. It's in a trust that was established before he became CEO. He has no legal access. He'll find a way around it. Let him try. I'll tie him up in so much litigation he won't have time to eat." Adrian's expression hardened into something cold and dangerous. "He wants a war? Fine. We'll give him a war." But even as he said it, Alara saw the crack in his armor, the flash of fear in his eyes, because they both knew the truth. Victor Voss didn't lose. He'd spent his entire life building an empire on the backs of people he'd crushed. He had unlimited resources, unlimited connections, and absolutely no conscience. And he'd just declared war on the two people who dared to defy him. Alara looked at Adrian, at Liam, at the hospital room that had become a battlefield, and she realized that no matter what choice she made, someone was going to bleed. The only question was whether she'd bleed alone or standing beside someone who'd learned, too late maybe, that some things were worth more than winning. The war started at dawn. Alara woke to the sound of her phone vibrating against the nightstand in an endless, angry rhythm. She'd fallen asleep in the chair beside Liam's hospital bed. Her neck kinked at an angle that sent pain shooting down her spine when she moved. Adrian was gone, had left sometime in the early morning hours to deal with what he'd called damage control. She picked up her phone. 43 missed calls, 67 text messages. Her social media accounts had been suspended due to reports of suspicious activity, which meant Victor's people had mass reported her until the platforms took her down. The first email in her inbox was from her bank. "Your account has been frozen pending investigation into possible fraudulent activity." The second was from her landlord, technically her former landlord since she'd moved into the penthouse. "Legal notice attached. Outstanding debts must be paid within 72 hours or we will pursue collections." The third was from the hospital's billing department. "Payment for Liam Quinn's continued care has been declined. Please contact us immediately to arrange alternative payment." Alara's hand shook as she scrolled through message after message. Victor was systematically destroying every financial foothold she had, freezing her accounts, calling in old debts, creating chaos designed to drown her. She called Adrian. He answered on the first ring, his voice rough with exhaustion. "I know," he said before she could speak. "He's hitting you from every angle. I'm working on it. My bank account is frozen. The hospital says payment was declined because he got a judge to issue a temporary restraining order on all accounts associated with the marriage contract. I'm fighting it, but it takes time." Liam doesn't have time. If the hospital doesn't get payment, I already transferred funds from a different account, one he can't touch. Dr. Reeves confirmed receipt 30 minutes ago. Liam's care continues uninterrupted. Alara sagged against the wall. How long can you keep doing this? Playing financial whack-a-mole with your father? As long as it takes. A pause. I need you to come to the penthouse. We're having an emergency strategy session with my legal team. Marcus will pick you up in 20 minutes. I'm not leaving Liam. Alara, if you want to protect him, you need to be part of this conversation. We're planning our counterattack. That means you need to be here. She looked at her brother, still sleeping, his chest rising and falling in the steady rhythm that meant he was stable. Safe. For now. Fine. 20 minutes. She told the nurse she'd be back by noon, kissed Liam's forehead, and met Marcus in the hospital lobby. The drive to the penthouse was silent. Marcus's jaw was tight, his eyes hard, and she realized he was angry. Actually angry. You okay? She asked. No. He didn't elaborate. The penthouse was transformed into a war room. Adrian's dining table was covered in legal documents, laptops, notepads filled with scrawled notes. 3 lawyers Alara didn't recognize were arguing over something in hushed, intense tones. Adrian stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, his free hand clenched in a fist against the glass. He ended the call when he saw her, crossed the room in 3 strides, and pulled her into a hug that felt more like a lifeline than a greeting. You okay? He asked against her hair. No, but I'm here. He released her, gestured to the table. Sit. We need to move fast. The lawyers introduced themselves. Richard something, Elena something else, and a third man whose name Alara immediately forgot. They launched into a presentation that felt like drinking from a fire hose. Legal precedents, countersuit options, media strategy, financial restructuring. The core problem, Richard said, is that Victor controls the narrative. Every news outlet, every social media platform, every public forum is running his version of events. Alara as predator, Adrian as victim. Until we disrupt that narrative, we're fighting uphill. So we disrupt it, Adrian said. We go public with the truth, the real truth. Elena shook her head. If you admit the marriage was contractual, you're confirming Victor's fraud allegations. That makes things worse, not better. Then what do you suggest? We pivot. We reframe the contract as a prenuptial agreement. Lots of wealthy people draft contracts before marriage. We argue that yours was unusually detailed because of your family's business interests, but that doesn't make the marriage itself fraudulent. That's a lie, Alara said quietly. All eyes turned to her. It is a lie, she continued. The marriage was contractual from the beginning. We can call it a prenup or reframe it however you want, but the truth is I signed a contract to play his wife for a year in exchange for my brother's medical care. That's the truth. And if we start this counterattack with more lies, we're no better than Victor. Silence fell across the room. Richard cleared his throat. With all due respect, Mrs. Voss, the truth in this case is legally devastating. If you admit to a contractual marriage, you're admitting to fraud. Federal prosecutors will have everything they need to build a case. Then let them build it. At least we'll be telling the truth. The truth will put you in prison. Maybe, but lies will destroy us anyway. Alara looked at Adrian. Your father has built an empire on lies and manipulation. If we fight him using his tactics, we become him. Is that what you want? Adrian's expression was unreadable. What I want is to keep you out of federal prison. And what I want is to stop living in a world where everything is performance and calculation and strategy. I'm tired of lying. I'm tired of pretending. If we're going to fight, let's fight with the truth. All of it. That's insane, Elena said flatly. You'll lose everything. We're losing everything anyway. Alara stood, planting her hands on the table. Look at what's happening. He's frozen my accounts. He's calling in debts. He's turned the entire world against me. And you're sitting here talking about reframing and pivoting and spinning the narrative like we're launching a product instead of fighting for our lives. I'm done with spin. I want to tell the truth and let the consequences land where they land. Adrian stared at her. Then slowly he smiled. Not the polite corporate smile or the controlled performance smile, but something real and sharp and dangerous. You're right, he said. Richard sputtered. Adrian, you can't be serious. I'm completely serious. We've been playing my father's game, fighting on his terms, using his weapons. And we're losing. So we changed the game. He turned to his lawyers. Draft a new statement. Full disclosure, the contract, the arrangement, the fact that it started as a transaction and became something else. Everything. That's career suicide, Elena said. The board will remove you immediately. Let them. I'm tired of letting my father dictate my life through fear of losing a company I never wanted to run in the first place. Adrian looked at Alara. You were willing to sacrifice your freedom to save your brother. The least I can do is sacrifice a job to stand beside you. This isn't just a job, it's your entire life. No, it's my father's life. I've just been living it for him. He turned back to the lawyers. You heard me. Draft the statement. We're going on record with the truth in 48 hours. The lawyers exchanged glances. Richard opened his mouth to protest again, but something in Adrian's expression stopped him. Fine, Richard said, but when this blows up in your face, don't say we didn't warn you. They spent the next 6 hours crafting a statement that laid everything bare. The contract, the medical payments, the transactional nature of the arrangement, but also the part where it had changed, where performance had blurred into reality, where two broken people had found something worth protecting in each other. By the time they finished, it was dark outside. The lawyers left, shaking their heads, probably already calculating the fallout. Marcus disappeared to arrange security. Apparently telling the truth was dangerous enough to require bodyguards. Alara and Adrian stood alone in the war room, surrounded by the evidence of their systematic dismantling of everything they'd built. This is crazy, Alara said. Completely. We're going to lose everything. Probably. Your father is going to destroy us. He's going to try. Adrian moved closer, his eyes holding hers. But here's the thing he never understood. Some things are worth losing everything for, and you're one of them. Before she could respond, her phone rang. Liam's hospital. Her heart stopped. Hello? Miss Quinn, this is Dr. Reeves. I need you to come back to the hospital now. What's wrong? Is Liam? He's stable, but there's been a development. Victor Voss showed up an hour ago with a court order demanding access to Liam's medical records. Security stopped him, but he's threatening to come back with police. Alara's blood turned to ice. He's going after Liam directly. It appears so. I think you should be here. And you should bring security. She hung up, looked at Adrian. Your father's at the hospital. He's trying to get to Liam. Adrian's expression went from concerned to murderous in the space of a heartbeat. Marcus, he shouted. Marcus appeared from wherever he'd been lurking. Sir? We need to get to County General, now, and call our security team. I want them there in 15 minutes. The drive to the hospital was a blur of city lights and racing thoughts. Alara's leg bounced uncontrollably, her hands clenched into fists. Adrian made call after call, arranging lawyers, security, whatever resources he could mobilize. They arrived to find Victor Voss in the hospital lobby, surrounded by his own security team and 2 police officers. He looked calm, collected, like a man who'd already won. Adrian, he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. And the lovely Alara. How convenient. We can discuss this all together. You're not getting anywhere near her brother, Adrian said, positioning himself between his father and the elevators. I'm not trying to harm the boy. I'm simply ensuring that my family's resources aren't being misused to support a fraudulent arrangement. Victor held up a document. This is a court order granting me access to Liam Quinn's medical records to verify that the expenses claimed in your contract actually correspond to legitimate medical treatment. You know they do. You're just trying to intimidate Alara. I'm protecting my family from a con artist. Victor's eyes shifted to Alara, cold and calculating. Tell me, my dear, how does it feel to use a dying child as leverage, to exploit his suffering for financial gain? The words hit like a slap. Alara felt Adrian tense beside her, ready to explode, but she put a hand on his arm. How does it feel to weaponize that same child to control your son? She asked quietly. Because that's what you're doing. You don't care about Liam or his medical records. You care about maintaining power over Adrian, and you're willing to terrorize a 13-year-old kid to do it. Victor's smile widened. Interesting. The waitress has teeth. I can see why Adrian found you entertaining, but entertainment doesn't change facts. You signed a fraudulent contract. You benefited financially from that fraud, and now you're going to pay the consequences. The only fraud here is you, Adrian said. You leaked that background check to make Alara look like a predator. You forged signatures on documents to make it look like I planned to trap her. You've systematically manufactured evidence to support your narrative while destroying anything that contradicts it. Prove it. I will. In court. Under oath. With receipts. Victor's expression flickered, just for a moment, but Alara saw it. Uncertainty. Fear, maybe. The realization that Adrian was serious. You'll perjure yourself to protect her? Victor asked. I'll tell the truth to protect her. There's a difference. The truth is that she manipulated you, that she saw an opportunity and exploited it, that she's everything I warned you about. No. The truth is that I manipulated her. I had her investigated, profiled, and targeted because she was desperate enough to sign my contract. I'm the predator in this story, not her. And I'm prepared to testify to that in front of any court you want. The lobby had gone silent. Hospital staff, visitors, even the police officers were watching the confrontation with wide eyes. Victor's jaw tightened. You'd destroy your own reputation to save hers? Without hesitation. Then you're more of a fool than I thought. Victor stepped closer, lowering his voice so only Adrian and Alara could hear. I built everything you have, the company, the wealth, the name you carry, and I can take it all away with a phone call. Is she really worth that? Adrian didn't hesitate. Yes. Something shifted in Victor's eyes, rage maybe, or the bitter recognition that he'd finally lost control over his son. Then you've made your choice, Victor said quietly, and you'll live with the consequences. He turned and walked out, his security team following. The police officers looked confused, checked their paperwork, and also left. The lobby erupted in whispered conversations. Alara's legs gave out. Adrian caught her, held her up, and they stood there in the fluorescent-lit lobby while her entire body shook with adrenaline crash. He's not done, she whispered. That was just the opening move. I know. He's going to come at us harder, meaner. I know. Adrian, I don't know if I can survive this. Yes, you can. Because you're stronger than him, stronger than me, stronger than anyone I've ever met. He pulled back, looked at her. And you're not alone anymore. Whatever he throws at us, we face it together. They went up to Liam's room. He was awake, pale, his eyes tracking them as they entered. Was that him? Liam asked. The guy everyone's talking about in the hallways, Victor Voss? Yeah, Alara said, sitting beside his bed. That was him. He looks like a villain from a movie. He basically is. Liam's hand found hers. Ellie, I've been thinking. Maybe you should take the deal. The immunity thing. Let me go and save yourself. Absolutely not. I'm serious. If you go to prison because of me, I'm not going to prison, and even if I was, it wouldn't be because of you. It would be because I made choices I believed in. She squeezed his hand. You don't get to sacrifice yourself to save me. That's my job. Pretty sure siblings are supposed to protect each other. Then we're doing it right. Adrian's phone buzzed. He checked it, and his expression went dark. It's starting. What is? He showed her the screen, news alerts flooding in, all with the same headline. Victor Voss announces board vote to remove Adrian Voss as CEO. Emergency meeting scheduled for tomorrow. Below that, a statement from Victor's PR team. In light of recent revelations regarding Adrian Voss's judgment and decision-making capabilities, the board of directors has agreed to convene an emergency session to review his position as chief executive officer. The Voss family remains committed to the integrity and stability of Voss Industries. He moved up the timeline, Adrian said quietly. He was supposed to wait until next month. He's accelerating because he knows we're planning to go public with the truth. Can he actually remove you? If he gets enough board votes, yes. He controls 3 seats directly. He needs 4 more to reach majority, and he's very good at convincing people to vote his way. Alara felt the trap closing around them. So while we're preparing to tell the truth, he's removing your ability to fight back. That's the plan. What do we do? Adrian's eyes met hers, and she saw the decision crystallize in them. We move up our timeline too. We go public tonight, before the board meeting, before he can control the narrative any further. Tonight, your lawyers said 48 hours. My lawyers aren't the ones about to lose everything. I am, and I'm not waiting for my father to take the first shot. He started making calls. Richard, Forget the 48-hour timeline. We're releasing the statement in 3 hours. I don't care if it's not polished. I don't care if we haven't vetted every word. We're going public tonight. Richard's voice came through the speakerphone, loud and alarmed. Adrian, that's insane. We haven't prepared for the media backlash. We haven't coordinated with PR. We haven't got time. My father is moving the board vote to tomorrow. If we don't get ahead of this, we lose any chance of controlling the story. Adrian's voice was steel. Draft the statement. Send it to every major outlet. I want it published by midnight. This is career suicide. So you've said. Repeatedly. But my career was dead the moment my father decided I was more valuable as a puppet than a person. At least this way, I go out telling the truth. He hung up, started making more calls, his CFO, his head of operations, key allies on the board. One by one, he told them what was happening. Some pledged support. Others hung up. A few promised to consider their position. By 10 p.m., they were back at the penthouse. Adrian's legal team had assembled again, looking exhausted and terrified. They presented the statement for final approval. Alara read it 3 times. It was brutal in its honesty. The contract, the arrangement, Adrian's calculation in choosing her, her desperation in accepting, the way it had evolved from transaction to something neither of them could name. It laid bare every manipulation, every lie, every cold decision that had brought them to this point. And then it pivoted. It talked about choice, about how 2 people who'd started in the worst possible way had chosen to become something better, how they'd chosen truth over performance, how they were choosing each other over the empire Victor had built on lies. It's good, Alara said quietly. It's really good. It's also a confession, Richard warned. Federal prosecutors could use every word as evidence. Let them. Adrian signed the approval. Send it. Richard hesitated, then nodded to Elena. She hit send. The statement went out to 50 different media outlets simultaneously, accompanied by scans of the original contract, financial records, and a timeline of events. Then they waited. The first response came at 10:47 p.m. A major news network picked it up, published it with the headline, Adrian Voss confesses, I bought a wife. Billionaire heir admits to contractual marriage arrangement. By 11:15, every major outlet was running the story. By midnight, it was trending worldwide. Alara watched the reactions flood in on social media. Half the internet was calling them the most romantic idiots alive. The other half was calling for federal prosecution. The comments were brutal, contradictory, overwhelming. Finally, some honesty from a billionaire. This is the sickest thing I've ever read. I'm crying. They chose each other. She's a gold digger and he's a sociopath. Lock them both up. This is what love looks like when you strip away all the pretty lies. This is what fraud looks like when you dress it up with emotions. Adrian's phone rang at 12:23 a.m. He glanced at the caller ID and something like grim satisfaction crossed his face. It's my father, he said. Then he answered, putting it on speaker. Hello, Father. Victor's voice came through, cold and controlled. Congratulations. You've just destroyed everything I built. No, I've just refused to let you destroy me. The board will vote you out tomorrow. You'll have nothing. No company, no position, no power. I'll have the truth, and I'll have her. That's more than you've ever had. You'll also have federal prosecutors building a case against both of you. I'll make sure of it. Do your worst. We're done hiding. Silence on the other end. Then, I underestimated you. I thought you were weak, like your mother. My mother left you because she was strong enough to survive on her own. I'm just following her example. She died alone and broke. Is that the legacy you want? Adrian's jaw clenched. She died free of you. That's legacy enough. He hung up. Alara stared at him. He's going to retaliate. Hard. I know, but we drew first blood. That's something. The lawyers were packing up, preparing to leave. Richard paused at the door. For what it's worth, I think you did the right thing. Legally speaking, you've committed professional suicide. But ethically? He shrugged. I've been practicing law for 30 years, and I've never seen anyone choose truth over winning. It's either brave or stupid. Maybe both. Definitely both, Adrian said. They left. Marcus disappeared to coordinate security for the board meeting tomorrow. and Alara and Adrian stood alone in the penthouse, surrounded by the wreckage of the life they'd known. "What happens now?" Alara asked. "Now we sleep, or try to. Tomorrow's going to be hell." "Worse than tonight?" "Much worse. The board meeting is at 10 a.m. My father will have spent the night calling in every favor, applying every pressure point, ensuring he has the votes to remove me. I'll walk into that boardroom knowing I've already lost." "Then why go?" "Because they need to see me lose with dignity. They need to know I'm not sorry, that I'd make the same choices again." He turned to face her fully. "And because I want them to see what I'm willing to sacrifice for you. All of it. The company, the money, the name, everything." Alara felt tears burn behind her eyes. "This isn't fair. You shouldn't have to lose everything. Life isn't fair. But we get to choose what we lose and what we fight for. And I'm choosing you." He pulled her close, and she let herself sink into him, breathing in the scent of expensive cologne and exhaustion and something that felt dangerously like home. They didn't sleep. They lay in Adrian's bed, together, for the first time, breaking another unspoken rule of their arrangement, and watched the ceiling while the world outside exploded with opinions about their confession. At 6 a.m., Adrian's phone rang. His CFO. "They're calling for a vote at 9 instead of 10, the CFO said without preamble. "Victor wants this done before the morning news cycle can fully digest your statement. He's moving fast." "How does it look?" "Bad. He's got 6 votes locked. You've got 2. The remaining 3 are undecided, but they're leaning his direction." "I'm sorry, Adrian. I don't think we can win this." "Neither do I, but thanks for the heads up." He hung up, looked at Alara in the gray pre-dawn light. "It's over," he said quietly. "The company's gone." "I'm sorry." "Don't be. I'm not." He sat up, ran his hands through his hair. "I need to shower and get ready. You should eat something. It's going to be a long day." "I'm coming with you, to the meeting." "Alara, you don't have to..." "Yes, I do. You stood beside me at that press conference. You faced your father in the hospital lobby. I'm not letting you walk into that boardroom alone." He looked at her for a long moment, then nodded. "Okay. Together, then." They dressed in silence. Adrian in another expensive suit that would probably be the last one he wore as CEO. Alara in the blue dress she'd worn to the first fundraiser because it felt right to come full circle. Marcus drove them to Voss Industries headquarters. The building looked the same as always, glass and steel and imposing wealth. But it felt different now, like a monument to something already dead. The boardroom was on the 40th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, a table that could seat 20. Portraits of previous Voss CEOs lining the walls, Adrian's grandfather, his great-grandfather, and at the far end, Victor himself. The board members were already assembled when they arrived. 10 people in expensive suits, avoiding eye contact, shuffling papers nervously. Victor sat at the head of the table, looking calm and satisfied. "Adrian," he said, "and Mrs. Voss, how, unexpected. This is a closed board meeting." "I'm still CEO until you vote otherwise," Adrian said, taking his seat at the opposite end of the table. "Which means I can invite who I want. Alara stays." Victor's smile tightened. "As you wish. Shall we begin?" The meeting was brutal in its efficiency. Victor presented his case. Adrian's recent behavior demonstrated poor judgment, instability, and a willingness to prioritize personal matters over company interests. The confession released last night proved he'd engaged in fraudulent activity. His continued leadership was a liability. Adrian didn't defend himself, didn't argue, just sat there with his hands folded, listening. When Victor finished, he called for the vote. One by one, the board members raised their hands. 6 for removal, 2 against, 3 abstentions that might as well have been votes for removal. "Motion carries," Victor said. Effective immediately, Adrian Voss is removed as Chief Executive Officer of Voss Industries. Security will escort him from the building within the hour. Adrian stood. "Before I go, I have something to say." "You've said enough. You can vote me out, but you can't stop me from speaking." Adrian's voice carried across the room, cold and clear. "You all just voted to remove me because my father convinced you I'm a liability. And maybe he's right. Maybe prioritizing a person over profit is bad business. Maybe choosing truth over strategy is poor judgment. Maybe loving someone enough to burn down my career for them demonstrates instability." He paused, meeting each board member's eyes. But here's what I know. My father built this company on lies, manipulation, and the systematic destruction of anyone who threatened his control. He taught me to see people as assets, relationships as transactions, and love as weakness. And for years I believed him. I became exactly what he wanted, a perfect replica of his cold, calculated approach to life. Victor stood. That's enough. I'm not finished. Adrian's voice cut through the room like a blade. 6 months ago, I was empty. Successful by every metric that mattered to this board, but completely hollow inside. And then I met someone who reminded me what it feels like to be human. Someone who was brave enough to sacrifice everything for the people she loved. Someone who called me on my bullshit and demanded I be better. He turned to Alara, and his expression softened. You want to know if my judgment is impaired? It is. By her. By the realization that some things are worth more than quarterly earnings and stock prices and maintaining the Voss family legacy. You want to remove me for that? Fine. But know that I'll walk out of here with more than I ever had sitting in this chair. I'll walk out with someone who sees me as a person instead of a position. The room was silent. Victor's face had gone red. Are you quite finished with your dramatic speech? Almost. Adrian pulled an envelope from his jacket, set it on the table. My formal resignation, effective immediately. You don't have to remove me. I'm leaving. He walked around the table, offered his hand to Alara. She took it, stood, and they walked toward the door together. You'll regret this, Victor called after them. Both of you. I'll make sure of it. Adrian paused in the doorway, looked back. You know what the difference is between us, Father? When you destroy people, they stay destroyed. When you tried to destroy her, she got stronger. When you tried to destroy us, we chose each other. You can take the company, the money, the name, but you can't take what we built from the ashes of your manipulation. They left. Security was waiting in the hallway with boxes for Adrian's office. He collected his things with mechanical efficiency. Awards he didn't care about, photos of events he barely remembered. The trappings of a life he'd never wanted. When they reached the lobby, a crowd of reporters was waiting. Cameras flashed. Questions came like machine gun fire. Adrian, do you regret the confession? Alara, are you worried about federal charges? Is the marriage real, or was it always a contract? Adrian stopped, faced the cameras, pulled Alara close. The marriage started as a contract, he said clearly, a transaction between two desperate people. But it became real. How real? Real enough that I just walked away from a billion-dollar company to protect her. Real enough that we're standing here together, knowing that federal prosecutors are probably watching this footage and building a case against us, and we don't care. Because some things are worth losing everything for. He kissed her then, in front of the cameras, the reporters, the world. And Alara kissed him back, tasting salt from tears she didn't know she'd cried. When they broke apart, the cameras were still flashing, the questions still coming. But none of it mattered. They walked out of Voss Industries headquarters hand in hand, leaving behind the empire, the legacy, the life Adrian had been groomed for since birth. Marcus was waiting with the car. They drove back to the penthouse in silence. When they arrived, Adrian went straight to the bar, poured 2 glasses of whiskey, handed one to Alara. To unemployment, he said with a bitter smile. To freedom, she countered. They drank. Alara's phone rang. Diane Foster. Have you seen it? The lawyer asked. Seen what? Victor's response. It went live 10 minutes ago. Alara pulled up the news on her phone. The headline made her stomach drop. Victor Voss announces criminal investigation into Adrian and Alara Voss, federal prosecutors to pursue fraud charges. Below it, a statement from Victor himself. It brings me no pleasure to take this action against my own son. But fraud is fraud, regardless of who commits it. The evidence is clear. The confession speaks for itself. I have cooperated fully with federal investigators and provided all documentation necessary to pursue charges against both Adrian and Alara Voss. Justice must be served. He's actually doing it, Alara whispered. He's actually trying to send us to prison. Of course he is, Adrian said, his voice flat. I humiliated him in front of the board. I chose you over his legacy. He can't let that stand. Diane's voice came through the speaker. I need you both to come to my office. Now. We need to prepare for what's coming. They went. Spent 4 hours with Diane and 2 criminal defense attorneys she'd brought in. The lawyers laid it out in stark terms. The confession gave prosecutors everything they needed. Intent, means, opportunity, benefit. The case against them was airtight. How long until they file charges? Adrian asked. Days, maybe a week. Victor's pushing hard. He wants this fast. And our chances of winning at trial? The defense attorneys exchanged glances. Low, very low. The confession is damning. The financial records support the fraud narrative, and Victor will testify against you. A jury will see a rich man who tried to game the system and a poor woman who helped him do it. That's not a sympathetic story. What are our options? Plea bargain. We try to negotiate reduced charges in exchange for cooperation. Maybe you serve a year or two instead of 5 to 10. That's still prison, Ilara said. Yes, but it's survivable. Adrian's hand found hers under the table, squeezed. We'll think about it. They left Diane's office as the sun was setting. The city looked beautiful from this height, all golden light and shadow, indifferent to the small human dramas playing out within it. I'm sorry, Adrian said as they drove home. I've destroyed your life. No, you gave me a choice. I chose to fight. That's on me. I could have walked away when this started. Let you take the immunity deal. Saved yourself. And let Liam die? Not a choice. He's going to lose you anyway if we go to prison. Ilar's throat tightened. I know. They rode the rest of the way in silence. Back at the penthouse, Ilar's phone buzzed, a text from Liam. Stop fighting for me, please. I'm not worth this. She called him immediately. Don't you dare say that. Ellie, you're going to prison because of me, because I got sick and you tried to save me, and now I'm going to prison, maybe. Because I made choices with my eyes open. You didn't ask for this. You didn't ask to get sick, and you sure as hell don't get to blame yourself for my decisions. But if you hadn't needed the transplant, I'd have found some other impossible situation to throw myself into. That's who I am. I don't know how to not fight for the people I love. Liam was quiet for a long moment. Then, do you love him? Adrian? Ilara looked across the penthouse to where Adrian stood by the windows, phone pressed to his ear, probably dealing with another crisis. Yeah, she said quietly. I think I do. Then it was worth it. Whatever happens, it was worth it. Don't talk like that. Like this is over. Isn't it? No, it's not over until we've lost. And we haven't lost yet. But even as she said it, she felt the lie in the words. They had lost. Victor had won. The only question now was how much damage they'd sustain before the final blow landed. She hung up with Liam, walked to where Adrian stood. He ended his call, turned to her. My legal team, he said. They're estimating federal charges will be filed within 72 hours. Wire fraud, conspiracy, possibly tax evasion if they can make it stick. So this is it. The end. Looks like it. He pulled her close, rested his forehead against hers. I'm sorry I couldn't protect you from this. You did protect me. You stood beside me. You chose me over everything else. That's more than anyone's ever done. They stood there in the dying light, holding each other, waiting for the world to come crashing down around them. Adrian's phone buzzed. He ignored it, buzzed again. Finally, he checked it. His expression shifted from resignation to shock. What? Ilara asked. It's Marcus. He says I need to turn on the news, Channel 7, right now. Adrian grabbed the remote, turned on the television. The anchor was mid-sentence. Shocking development in the Voss family saga. We're now receiving reports that Victor Voss himself is under federal investigation for corporate fraud, tax evasion, and racketeering. Sources close to the investigation say that Adrian Voss's confession last night triggered a deeper probe into Voss Industries' business practices. And what investigators found was... The anchor paused, pressing her earpiece. We're going live to a statement from the U.S. Attorney's Office. The screen cut to a federal prosecutor standing behind a podium. Today, we are announcing a 40-count indictment against Victor Voss and 3 members of the Voss Industries Board of Directors. The charges include securities fraud, wire fraud, money laundering, and obstruction of justice. Our investigation, which began following Adrian Voss's public statement last night, has uncovered evidence of systematic fraud dating back over 2 decades. Mr. Victor Voss will be taken into custody within the hour. The room spun. Ilara grabbed Adrian's arm to steady herself. What? She couldn't form words. How? Adrian was staring at the television like it was speaking a language he didn't understand. Then slowly, he started to laugh. Not a happy laugh. A bitter, disbelieving sound that bordered on hysteria. He tried to destroy us, Adrian said, and instead we destroyed him. The prosecutor was still talking. We want to be clear that Adrian Voss and Alara Voss are not targets of this investigation. While their contractual marriage arrangement raises ethical questions, it does not rise to the level of criminal fraud. However, their confession provided crucial information that helped us uncover the larger criminal enterprise. Alara's legs gave out. She sank onto the couch, unable to process what she was hearing. They weren't being charged. Victor was. Her phone exploded with notifications, text messages, calls, social media mentions. The world was losing its mind over the news. Adrian's phone rang. He answered, listened, then looked at Alara with an expression she couldn't read. That was the board, he said quietly. Victor's been removed as chairman. They're asking me to come back as CEO. What did you say? I said I'd think about it. He set the phone down, moved to sit beside her. But I don't think I want it. The company, the position, all of it. I spent my whole life trying to be what my father wanted, and it nearly destroyed both of us. I don't want to go back to that. So what do you want? Adrian looked at her, really looked at her, and she saw everything in his eyes, the exhaustion, the relief, the tentative hope that maybe, somehow, they'd survived. I want to start over, he said, with you. No contracts. No, I want to start over, Adrian said, with you. No contracts, no performances, no obligations except the ones we choose. Alara stared at him, trying to process the whiplash of the last 24 hours. They'd confessed to fraud. Adrian had resigned from his company. Victor had threatened them with prison. And now, somehow, Victor was the one being arrested while they were free. This doesn't feel real, she whispered. It's not. Not yet. Adrian's phone buzzed again. He glanced at it and something flickered across his face. It's my mother. Your mother? I haven't spoken to her in 3 years. She left my father when I was 17, moved to London, and we lost touch. He stared at the phone like it might explode. She's asking if I'm okay. Are you going to answer her? I don't know. He set the phone down. I spent so long being angry at her for leaving, for abandoning me to him. But she didn't abandon me. She escaped, and I was too blinded by his manipulation to see the difference. The television was still running the story, footage of Victor being led out of Voss Industries headquarters in handcuffs. His face was a mask of rage and disbelief, like he couldn't comprehend a world where he wasn't in control. Reporters shouted questions, cameras flashed. The man who'd built an empire on intimidation and lies was finally, publicly, being brought down. He looks small, Alara said quietly. Without the power, without the fear. He just looks like a small, angry man. That's all he ever was. We just couldn't see it because he'd convinced us he was bigger than he actually was. Adrian turned off the television. The silence that followed felt enormous. What happens now? To us? I don't know. I haven't thought past surviving the next crisis. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe we've been so focused on survival that we forgot to think about what comes after. Alara's phone rang. The hospital. Her heart lurched. Miss Quinn? Dr. Reeves' voice came through, and for once he sounded pleased. I wanted to let you know that Liam's latest blood work came back perfect. His kidney function is excellent. His body has fully accepted the transplant. Barring any unforeseen complications, he's going to make a complete recovery. The words hit her like a physical blow. Alara's knees buckled and she sank onto the couch, tears streaming down her face. Say that again, she managed. He's going to be fine, Alara. Your brother is going to live a normal, healthy life. She couldn't speak, could only nod, even though Dr. Reeves couldn't see her. Adrian's hand found hers, squeezed, and she held on like he was the only thing keeping her anchored to the earth. Thank you, she finally choked out. Thank you for everything. Thank Mr. Voss. His insistence on bringing in those specialists made all the difference. She hung up, turned to Adrian, and the dam broke. All the fear, the exhaustion, the desperation she'd been holding back for months came pouring out in great, racking sobs. Adrian pulled her close and held her while she fell apart, his own breathing unsteady, his grip almost painful in its intensity. He's okay, she gasped against his shoulder. Liam's okay. He's going to live. I know, I know. They sat there on the expensive couch in the sterile penthouse and cried together. For everything they'd lost, everything they'd survived, and everything they still didn't know how to name. When Alara finally pulled herself together, her face was swollen and her throat was raw. Adrian looked equally destroyed, his eyes red-rimmed, his careful control completely shattered. I need to see him, Alara said. I need to see Liam. Right now. I'll drive you. They made it to the hospital in record time. Liam was sitting up in bed, color in his cheeks, looking more alive than he had in months. When he saw Alara, his face split into a grin. Did you hear? He asked. Dr. Reeves said I get to go home in a week. Actual home, not hospital home. I heard. Alara sat beside his bed, took his hand. You scared the hell out of me, you know that? Yeah, well, you scared the hell out of me too. Marrying a stranger, confessing to fraud on national television, almost going to prison. You're way more dramatic than I am. It's a gift. Liam looked past her to where Adrian stood in the doorway. So, you're sticking around? Or was this whole thing just to save your own ass? Liam, Alara started, but Adrian held up a hand. Fair question. He moved into the room, pulled up a chair. I'm sticking around. If your sister will have me, and if you'll tolerate me. Why should I? Because I love her, and because I'm going to spend the rest of my life trying to deserve her, and because you're part of that package, which means I'm stuck with you whether I like it or not. Liam studied him for a long moment. Then he stuck out his hand. Okay, but if you hurt her again, I don't care how much money you have. I'll find a way to ruin your life. Adrian shook his hand. Deal. They stayed at the hospital for hours, just talking. Normal conversation for the first time in months. Liam told them about the nurses who'd been sneaking him extra pudding cups, about the physical therapist who'd convinced him to try walking laps around the ICU, about the plans he had once he got out, school, friends, maybe trying out for the basketball team even though he'd never been particularly athletic. I want to live, he said simply. I spent so long dying that I forgot what it felt like to want things, to plan for next week or next month or next year. I want that back. Then you'll have it, Alara said. Whatever you want, however I can help. I want you to be happy. That's what I want. Liam looked at Adrian. Both of you. You fought so hard to save me. Now I want you to fight just as hard to save yourselves. When visiting hours ended, Alara kissed her brother's forehead and promised to be back tomorrow. Adrian shook his hand again, and they left together, stepping out into a cold night that felt, somehow, less hostile than before. What do we do now? Alara asked as they drove back through the city. I don't know. For the first time in my life, I genuinely don't know. Adrian's hands tightened on the steering wheel. I've always had a plan, a strategy, a calculated next move. But right now, I have nothing except you and a penthouse I'm not sure I even want anymore. What do you want? Honestly, I want to disappear. Take you somewhere far away from all of this. Start over where no one knows our names or our history or the fact that we confessed to fraud on national television. That sounds nice. Completely impossible, but nice. Why impossible? Because we can't just run away. You have legal issues to resolve. I have Liam to take care of. I don't even know what we have, but we can't just abandon it. Adrian was quiet for a long moment. Then, what if we could? What if we resolved everything here? The legal stuff, Liam's ongoing care, all of it, and then we just left, started fresh somewhere else? You'd really do that? Give up New York, the company, everything you know? The company already fired me. New York is just a city, and everything I know is tied to a life I don't want anymore. He glanced at her. I'm serious, Alara. What if we took the next year, the year you were supposed to give me anyway, and we actually lived it? No contracts, no obligations, just figuring out who we are when we're not performing. The idea should have terrified her, should have seemed reckless and impractical and completely insane. But instead, it felt like the first real breath she'd taken in months. Where would we go? She asked. Anywhere. Everywhere. We could travel, see the world, figure out what we actually want instead of what we've been told to want. That sounds expensive. I still have money, quite a lot of it actually. My personal wealth is separate from the company. We could live comfortably for years without touching the principal. And Liam? We bring him with us once he's recovered. He deserves to see the world too. Deserves to make up for all the time he spent in hospital beds. Alara turned the idea over in her mind, examining it from every angle, looking for the trap, the catch, the hidden clause that would turn this dream into another nightmare. But she couldn't find one. Okay, she said quietly. Adrian's head snapped toward her. Okay? Okay. Let's do it. Let's disappear for a while, figure out who we are when we're not drowning. He pulled the car over. They were on some side street in a neighborhood Alara didn't recognize, and turned to face her fully. Are you sure? Because once we do this, there's no going back to the way things were. I don't want to go back. I want to go forward, with you, wherever that leads. Adrian kissed her then, urgent and desperate and real, and Alara kissed him back, tasting salt and hope, and the terrifying possibility of a future they'd build themselves. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Adrian rested his forehead against hers. I love you. I know I've said it before, but I need you to know I mean it. Not as part of a performance, not as a strategy. Just, I love you. I love you too. Even though you're an emotionally stunted corporate robot who had me psychologically profiled before we met, especially because of that, despite that. But I'm working on forgiving you for it. I'll take it. They drove back to the penthouse. Alara was exhausted, running on fumes and adrenaline and the fragile hope that maybe, somehow, they'd survive the worst of it. But the worst wasn't quite over. They were in the elevator, rising toward the penthouse, when Adrian's phone rang. His lawyer, Richard. Adrian, we have a problem. Richard's voice was tight, controlled in that way that meant he was barely containing panic. Victor's legal team is claiming that his arrest was orchestrated by you. They're saying you fed false information to federal investigators to frame him for crimes he didn't commit. That's insane. I didn't feed them anything. They found the evidence on their own after our confession triggered their investigation. I know that, you know that, but Victor's lawyers are very good at creating doubt. They're filing for immediate release, claiming the evidence was obtained through fraud. And if they succeed, Victor walks free and potentially comes after you with renewed fury. The kind of fury that comes from a man who is publicly humiliated and arrested. Alara felt the fragile hope drain away. Of course it wasn't over. Of course Victor had one more move to make. Adrian's jaw clenched. What do? We fight. But Adrian, if they manage to get the